Okay.
If you want to come to the table, we have plenty of room tonight. Because we have 3 counselors online, so I just figured it's easier than balancing your laptop.
All right. We will call to order. Welcome to the Laramie City Council Work Session, Wednesday, May 14, 2025. And we will begin our work session with public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on non-agenda items? Hearing none, we can move on to our work session, recommended supplemental budget. And I turn it over to Janine Jordan and Director Wade.
Thank you, Council. For this evening, we're scheduled to conclude the general fund. We'll be talking with the police chief about his department. I will cover city attorney's office for Bob. Jen will talk about her department, and then Mike Bork will talk about Parks, Recreation, and Community Services under his direction. As we have time under both the police department and the Parks, Rec, and Community Services department, at the end of the general fund part of their presentation, we're going to touch on other funds that are relevant to their operations, and that will kind of get us through tonight, leaving only for Monday a quick review of your surface water drainage fund, your new fund with the city engineer, and then just a couple of the minor funds that we'll touch base on that really don't have much going on in them, but we don't want to leave them unattended to. So that's the plan for tonight. I think this will be about a 2-hour conversation, depending on how quickly our directors move through their material. So that's a not so subtle reminder. No, we want you to take the time you need to talk thoroughly about your departments, but we have been trying to keep our evenings to not more than 2 hours because, frankly, eyes glaze over and everybody gets budget fatigue. So with that, I'll ask Director Wade if she has anything she wanted to mention. Okay, all right. Well, then I think we're ready for Chief Brian Brown. We're starting on page 65 in your workbook. For you, Chief, and for Director Bork, generally what we've asked you to cover is the material in the workbook that talks about accomplishments from the previous year and goals that you have set for the forthcoming year, and then cover your supplemental requests that are being recommended for council funding.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. And I want to start by thanking you guys. I know this is an extremely heavy carry for the council team, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to our requests, specifically the police department's requests. And since this is the second year of our budget, we have very few supplemental requests, so I think our portion will be relatively quick. So hopefully we can get you guys out of here a little early. So with that, I will jump straight into our personnel request because I think it's going to be the quickest. We have none. And in full transparency, we've had several vacancies throughout the year in both emergency communications and throughout the police department because of various vacancies, retirements. Right now we're sitting on, I believe we have 4 retirements that just occurred, with a 5th one coming up here in June, and then a 6th one potentially in July. And those are just what we're seeing is as guys hit their 20 to 25 year mark, a couple of them hit their 29 to 30 year mark, they're looking to move on to either their next career or fully retire. And we've seen that at all ranks, including the Assistant Chief Robert Terry, who is now working for Wyoming Police Officer Standards and Training as their director. Lieutenant Ryan Thompson, who's now working for the university as the Assistant Chief there under Chief Josh Holland. And then we were going to have Sergeant Kurt Moore, who will be retiring here on June 2nd, I believe is the date. And then behind him, we have a few more that are looking to join other organizations as they reach their 20-year mark. So where we have a lot of testing going on in our organization, we have promotional tests. I know I've reached out to some of you to sit on those boards. On May 28th will be sergeant testing, June 4th will be our lieutenant's testing, and June 11th will be our testing for assistant chief. And we did open it up to nationwide search for assistant chief. And I believe we had 16 applications from various parts of the country, and we've invited 4 to Laramie for the in-person interview process. So we're excited to see, and that includes one internal candidate, Lieutenant Ton Smith, who I have the utmost confidence in his performance. So I'll start with our supplemental request. We only have 4 supplemental requests tonight, and I believe that's on page 41, but I'll confirm that for you here. 40 going into page 41. And the first request is a request for an increase for our training budget. And we haven't requested an increase in our training budget since 2016. And we've seen some substantial increases in training requirements required by Wyoming police officer standards and training. Most of those training requirements revolve around perishable skills training, which is firearms training, use of force training, taser training, and soon to be Fourth Amendment search and seizure training, which we anticipate coming online here in the next 6 months to a year, an additional requirement. We're also making sure that we're focusing on CIT, crime intervention team training, which has been a priority for our organization. And we're requesting this $22,000 increase, and I also want to make council aware that we have received reimbursement through Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs, and they received some federal funding to reimburse organizations, including our own. I confirmed it is reimbursement funds for some of this training. And this year, I believe that we've received, initially it was $18,000, then we just received another $6,000 check for that. So that $22,000 request is offset by that amount. And we also received approximately the same amount last year, and we didn't make any additional requests. And we're hopeful that that CIT funding will continue, but it's not guaranteed. And in light of the current federal grant situation, we don't know if it's going to continue or not. But for the last 2 years, we've received approximately $40,000 in grant funding from them, or reimbursement from them. That's the first request. The second one is our community engagement request. We currently don't have a budget for community engagement, and last year we spent over $7,000 on different community engagement events, and that includes booths at various events, and then also handouts, youth handouts, items used to engage the community that we used at farmers markets, Freedom Has a Birthday, and then various other events, whether we're at events at Biotech, we're at events at the high school frequently, UW events, basically anywhere in the community that we were asked to speak or present. And just to give you an example, I am also on the United Way board, and I was touring Head Start of Laramie 2 weeks ago as part of the allocations committee tours, and it just so happened that our community engagement team was there when I was there, and they were giving a traffic safety presentation to students there at the school, and then also a safety presentation later in the evening to parents. So that's just kind of one example of the work that they're doing, and I believe that the $5,000 request is reasonable based on the amount of events that they're attending. And just that team alone attended approximately 64 events last year. That doesn't include the events that Assistant Chief Terry and I also attended. The next request, so this is out of the LARC budget, and I spoke with Director Wade just to confirm. This is subject to the 80-20 split that we currently have, the agreement we have with the county, and that's for services related to emergency response radio communications. And this request is consistent with our CAD and RMS upgrades, which is our record management system, and our dispatching system that we use to manage all emergency reports, all emergency dispatch recordings, and all emergency dispatch records keeping. So approximately a year and a half before I got here, we completely went online with Tyler, and that was a several $1 million project to upgrade our CAD and RMS systems. At that time, Tyler did tell us eventually we would have to move to integrate to a cloud storage system. Currently, we have an on-site server or 2 on-site servers that we utilize, and this is part of that project. So it's essentially a continuation of our CAD RMS upgrades to move all of our storage, all of our records into that cloud integration. We've been working with Director Rhodes from IT on that project. And initially, when we got the quote from Tyler, I think we were over $200,000. I want to say $233,000 to be exact. And then Director Wade assisted us and IT Director Rhodes in looking at what we're already paying for with cloud services with Tyler due to the CAD RMS upgrade and then also the ERP and then various systems that we're still upgrading across the city. And we were able to bring that number down a significant amount to $42,000, which some of those costs are offset in the savings that we'll have with our current servers going offline. And then our last request is $20,000, and this is an equipment and operations request. And what we've seen over the last, really since 2020, is significant increases in a lot of the stuff that we use, a lot of the tools that we use. One example that I have is ammunition. We were looking at 223 rounds, and I believe a box of about 1,000 223 rounds of ammunition was approximately $330 in 2020 to 2022. Now it's over I believe it's $450 for the same box of ammunition, and we're seeing that across the board. And that's probably the rounds that we use the least when you look at 9mm rounds, 45 rounds, 40. Those are have all significantly increased due to inflation and since COVID. We've also seen some increase in other areas, and I anticipate a lot of those costs being offset by the increase that we've had to parking fines. So hopefully that will supplement most of the increase that we're requesting in this category. And then those funds will also be used for our new boot program. And if you recall, when we presented the program to increase parking fines, we also were looking to take warrants out of the equation. So when individuals have 3 or more violations, instead of going to a warrant for their arrest, which may or may not be the person driving their car, especially in a college town where you have a lot of students driving their parents' cars, we would prefer to place a boot on the car until it's paid instead of taking someone to jail. So those, depending on the type of boot, which we've had a lot of education in this in the last couple months. It depends on the size of the car, the size of the tire, the type of the vehicle, 4-wheel drive, and there was one other category that our tow companies were talking to us about. It ranges from about $1,500 to $7,000 per boot. And we're assuming that we'll probably need 6 to 8 a year. And the companies estimate that you'll lose 2 of those boots either to destruction, somebody trying to take them off, somebody trying to drive with them, which I'm really excited to see because I've never seen that before. Or some other type of vandalism by trying to get the boot off. And we did look at other systems. We looked at the Barnacle system. Cheyenne PD used that for approximately 1.5 years, and then they went offline with it. And part of the issue with that is anytime there was a crack, which is pretty common here in Wyoming, the Barnacle would not seal to the actual windshield. So that's not an option for us. It also had a significant reoccurring cost, which the boots do not. We buy them at a one-time cost. Any questions with any of those first 4?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Brown. I just have one question for the community engagement promotional items. What's a missing child DNA kit? I'm just curious.
Through you, Mayor? Yes. Council members, so the missing child DNA kit is it's actually a kit that's used to teach kids, kind of like a coloring book, like a younger kit for small kids, where they have an opportunity to take each other's fingerprints, draw pictures of each other. It has a list of questions regarding what you would look for when somebody's missing, like what they were wearing last, haircut, so a variety of questions that, to be honest with you, we would ask adults when they report a child missing. So it's kind of it's a community engagement tool that kind of gets children interested in what we're doing on the law enforcement side. Cool. So, yeah. Thank you.
Councilor O'Doherty.
I got one of those when my kids were little, and there was a little swab too that you put in some formalin or something. So I still have their DNA in a test tube at home in case they go missing. They're 30.
Counselor Vigil.
Just real quick comment, 5,000 for promotional items goes so fast. I learned this in my day job recently. My office actually copied our Parks and Rec department with their chapsticks because they're so awesome. They're expensive, so that's a very modest request. And so just wanted to note that. It goes so fast.
Mayor, if I can add one thing.
Yes.
Through you, Mayor, we also utilize our police foundation, which I believe gave us another $2,500 last year, so that we get additional supplemental funding through the police foundation. And then we also leverage a lot of our nonprofit partners, like several times at the farmers market. I was actually out there twice. And then also for National Night Out, the Soup Kitchen donated ice cream. So we were able to go out there and give ice cream too, which proved to be the most popular thing. I think we went through about 4 large containers of ice cream at the one farmer's market I was at, and maybe double that at National Night Out, which was actually a really, really good success. I think we probably had about 75 community members participate.
Further questions or comments? Chief, I have a comment and a question. My comment is that I really appreciate the value that you and the division place on CIT training. I think it's just made a huge difference in officer competence in these sometimes really weird situations. And I just think it's really important that we do continue that, and I hope it's not a program that's X, but if it is, I think we need to figure out how to continue to support that. And my question would be right now, do you have an idea about the percent trained at this point in time?
To answer that, Mayor, the last time I checked, which was, I believe was before the last class, about 66% of the department is trained. And we've kind of been going through a transition in our agency. We've seen a lot of retirements here in the last few years. So we've hired a lot of officers, and I have to credit Sergeant Asa Hutchinson and his team. They've done a phenomenal job in recruiting, and we've really been able to keep our numbers. We're slotted for 47 sworn officer positions, and we've really been able to keep our numbers probably between 44 and 47, I would estimate. The problem is it takes us so long to get an officer through training, so you're looking at approximately 6 months. And on average, I would say that probably out of every 15 officers, we lose 2 or 3. Just to various phases of training, whether they don't make it through the police academy, the field training program. But we have changed our training program significantly in the last couple of years to make sure that we're giving our officers, our recruits, the best opportunity to be successful. And just to make one thing clear, we will not discontinue our CIT program. We hope to continue to get funding through various sources, whatever we can find. Whether or not that holds true or not, we'll find it in our budget to make sure that our officers are trained.
So we were at 80%, but then with a number of retirements and some of the personnel transition, that number went down, but then we'll get back up, which is significantly higher than the national average, which is what, about 40-something?
Mayor, I'm not 100% sure on that. I can just speak for my previous department. It was less than 40%. So we had a homeless engagement team and a community engagement team and then a mental health team that were required to do it, and we were probably less than 10%.
Okay.
And that's usually what you see with large organizations. But the good thing about moving through the promotional process is now we'll have a group of new sergeants, lieutenants, and potentially an assistant chief who have all had that training. So we're excited about the changes in our organization.
Thank you.
So Mayor, that is the general fund portion of the police department. Just to give you some perspective, total budget for that department is, I believe, 9.6 million. I'm on page 65. Total budget for the police department that was originally approved for this year was, I believe, 9.6 million. I'm just clarifying that number in my memory. Yes, $9.68 million. The adjustments the chief just described to you, net of the county's 20% cost share in LARC is $80,731, which is less than 1% change that we're recommending in the budget for additional expenses, not accounting, of course, for centrally budgeted changes for utility costs or personnel changes in benefits, et cetera.
And I'll move on to our goals for 2025. And I won't touch on every one of these. I know there's a lot in there across the three divisions with animal control, LARC, and the police department. But there are a few I would like to highlight, especially going into 2026. As you can see with on some of the notes, we've noted some significant training hours that we've had with our officers. One of the things that we try to do here in Laramie is specialize officers in certain areas such as taser training, firearms training, use of force training, CIT training, so that they're able to be instructors. And by sending them out to training classes where they essentially are instructors, they can come back and provide that training to the rest of the organization. So that's something we've heavily focused on. The other program that I'd like to talk about is the Albany Care Team program. Recently, we've seen some significant changes with that program. I just found out last week that from the VOA, our VOA local area supervisor, Kristen Cavello, is accepting a new position. She is accepting a new position with the county, so we're hoping to leverage some of those resources. She'll be providing wellness services for the officers and other employees over there at the county. So I will leverage those to the best of my ability. And we have a great working relationship with Sheriff Applehands and his team. So we look forward to seeing what she's going to do over there and who's next, and working with that person to make sure that the ACT program continues. And that's been a significant, it's had a significant impact in our response, our mental health response. So typically the way that a mental health call responsive for service prior to when we started the program approximately a year and a half ago would look, the way that it would look is an officer would respond to any type of mental health call, and then they would evaluate them to see if they met the criteria to be taken to behavioral health services at Ivinson. If they didn't meet that criteria, there was really no follow-up services available for that individual, or at least that we would partake in from that point on. The change was that we have a case manager on site contracted through the VOA, and that was a split cost sharing that this council authorized us to spend funds on. And it was approximately $20,000 a year was our portion, and that included, and then there was additional contributions of $20,000 a year from the University of Wyoming Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, and then also the VOA. So everybody kind of chipped in to make sure that we all had an invested interest in the program being successful. And after that program started, every single mental health call for service that we went to, the report was directly, the report and call for service was directly routed to our VOA representative. And within 48 hours, 72 if it was a weekend, but generally 48 hours, they would make contact with that individual if they were not taken to Ivinson. If they were taken to Ivinson, they would respond to BHS on their next workday, which was as short as a couple hours and as long as 24 hours. And they built a great relationship there at Ivinson, and then a great relationship with us. And then our representative about 6 months ago started going out on calls for service with us, and she went out to about 5 calls for service, and that just happened to be when she was in the station, which is approximately 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, just at the Laramie Police Department. And I can tell you that almost pretty close to 100% of her reports and calls for service came from the Laramie Police Department. And as the largest jurisdiction, the most populated jurisdiction in the area, we had the most calls for service. And I'm happy to report that approximately 2 years ago, we had the university look at our calls for service, and we had approximately one mental crisis type call a day. And we're down to less than 25%, or about 25% less than we were at that time. So I won't contribute that 100% to the ACT program. I think there's a lot of variables coming off the heels of COVID and looking at the data at that time, and we're starting to see a lot more programs, recreational programs and other programs throughout the community that are available now that people are partaking in. It's probably lowered that mental health response calls for service too. But I will say I do believe that the VOA's partnership and their response, their quick response and the wraparound services that they've provided, and some of the numbers are stated in the budget report, it has had a significant impact on what we're doing. And I kind of jokingly got here and said, hey, if we even help one person, that's good enough for me. But realistically, I was hoping for a 10% decrease. So to see a number like 25%-ish is pretty encouraging for our team. So, and then two other projects that I'd like to talk about moving forward. One is a hot topic. Downtown parking. So we have an RFP out right now for the downtown parking program. And essentially what we're looking for is we're hoping to utilize, I know you guys had asked, I think it was IT Director Rhodes, about their use of AI and how much AI technology we're utilizing in the city. And I can tell you from my perspective, I would prefer never to come to this council and ask for additional bodies. I won't say that I won't ever come to council and ask for additional bodies, but I do believe that in a lot of the things that we're doing as our profession progresses, there's a lot of opportunities to leverage AI, specifically in law enforcement, but I think maybe across city government, and this is one of those ways. So we reached out to various firms. We went out to RFP. We had our initial question and answer session, and we're hoping to, I believe it closes next week, and we're hoping to get a significant amount of responses. And essentially what we're looking for is an artificial intelligence type position or type resource downtown that can analyze parking spaces individually, read plates when individuals enter that geofenced area. The 2-hour time limit would start, and then if they stay there for over that 2-hour time limit, a third-party vendor would issue a citation. It would go to the courts and the subject who potentially violated the law, and then they would have their opportunity to present their case in court. And this is something that the downtown community has asked for, I think, ad nauseum for this council to respond to. And I can tell you for sure, ad nauseum with me, I just spoke with a community member again yesterday, especially with the 3rd Street closures and the significant issues they're having down there. So hopefully this is a solution that works well for our organization and the community as a whole. I can tell you it is extremely difficult for us with our activity level, especially midday, to have officers respond to that downtown area consistently every 2 hours to make sure that area is enforced heavily. So this is an opportunity that we can use enforcement tools without having officers respond. Yeah, I'll take any questions on that one. I've had a few in the community, if anybody has any. Okay.
I see none.
And then the last thing I'd like to talk about, I know Chief Johnson touched on the other night.
I do have a question. Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Chief, for your presentation. I was just curious, do you know if there are other communities in Wyoming that are using a similar AI technology like that for parking? I was just curious. Thanks.
Through you, Mayor, Councilmember Freed, there are approximately 8 communities actively using license plate reader technology in Wyoming. None of those communities that I'm aware of are using it for parking enforcement. Cheyenne was using license plate readers. Actually, they are still using license plate readers on their vehicles for enforcement, and essentially what that looks like is they'll drive through an area, the license plate readers will capture the plate and document the time, then they get a notification from the vendor or the software vendor that they're utilizing, and at 2 hours or whatever their time limit is for that specific area, they get a notification saying to go back and check. They go back and check, and if that vehicle is there, then they get pop up on the software saying that vehicle's been there for over 2 hours. And that's one of the options that we asked this group to look at. Our preference would be to completely take the human response out of it, because I think it's a better service to the community long-term. However, I don't know that technology exists in the way that we're looking for it to, especially with our current infrastructure. So that's what we're asking these vendors to take a look at. There are a few communities, one that I recall was Alhambra, California, that's currently utilizing the technology. And one of the vendors had asked us if we would be interested in looking at what they're doing out there. And it really just depends on the cost analysis. My hope is that this will be offset by the revenue collection in that area. We should see an increase, I would suspect, in revenue on that area. And if not, hopefully all or in part of it will be offset by the costs of the increases of the current parking citations that we just passed the ordinance on approximately 6 months ago.
Thanks, Chief Brown.
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor, if I could add to that, the chief mentioned infrastructure, but I wanted to maybe just give you a little more detail. In our downtown, we don't have consistent electricity in the public rights-of-way, like on the light poles, for instance. There's no plugins. And we also don't have consistent Wi-Fi and internet. And so when you think of using these AI technologies, they exist, but maybe for downtowns a little less historic than ours. So that's one of our limiting factors. But we're optimistic that technology will bring us a cool solution and help us work around the infrastructure constraints.
And Mayor, just to add to that, we're hoping to utilize solar technology, which it seems like, based on our sun in the area, that's a possibility. And then we've also spoken with various vendors and Assistant City Manager Feeser on maybe working with an agreement where they would allow us to use their Wi-Fi, the businesses downtown, where it's available. And then the last project that I'd like to talk about, I know Chief Johnson kind of touched on this the other night, is we currently have an RFQ out for a public safety facility project, which this council appropriated funds for last year. And we're hoping to work to partner with the county on that, and hopefully have a new public safety center with combined organizations, us, the fire department, and the sheriff's department. And part of the reason for that is it's a better service to the community. It's a one-stop shop. Right now, we're very segregated. The police department is on the south end of town. Our records division is here. The sheriff's department is here, and the sheriff's department primarily does fingerprinting for most of the community. So it's pretty frequent that we'll get somebody going to one of those three places, and it's just not the right place for what they're seeking. So we would really like to consolidate that and have a one-stop shop for the community, hopefully closer to downtown, but we'll see what the vendors come up with. So we had an opportunity to meet with several architects a few weeks ago, and they had some promising options for us. So we'll see. Well, I'm sure you'll be hearing about that in the near future. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions or comments?
If I can add as well, I wanted to mention that the timeline for the facility needs analysis is the end of this calendar year. Reason for that, of course, is in 2026, we will be renewing as a community, hopefully, renewing the fifth and the sixth penny. And the sixth penny could be a source of funding for facilities of this nature. So we're trying to get ahead of that as best we can so that we have good information for this governing body, Rock River, and the Board of Commissioners, all three of whom will have to make those decisions.
Well, Chief, I would just like to make a quick comment. First, I'd like to ask you a question. The training hours that you gave us, does that also include the training that you do for the Police Advisory Board and the recent training that you did for the Community Citizens Group?
Mayor, that does not.
I suspected that.
If you added those hours, I believe the police, at this point, I would assume that the initial, I believe, was 40 hours of training for the Police Advisory Board, and over the last year, I would suspect that they've received at minimum at least another 40 hours of training. And then our community board, or our community academy, I believe it was 6 weeks. I could be off, it could have been 4, but I believe it was 6. And that was approximately 2 to 4 hours every Wednesday for that amount of time. So we're excited. We had a good turnout. I believe we had 9 people participate in it, 9 citizens, and we're looking forward to the next one. So we learned a lot of stuff. We learned what the citizens would like to see and what they kind of weren't super interested in. So we're going to tailor the next one to those responses, but we're excited about it.
Well, I really commend you and your teaching staff on getting that up and running. And I saw the photo that was put on social media, and it was just real interesting to see, and I appreciate the effort that went in to offering that and getting it up and started. And having gone through 2 years of training every other month, I was totally impressed. I learned so much from that, and it just has made a difference in my functioning, so.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
technology that is used to operate the 911 center. There is a small adjustment to this fund recommended for this year. And Chief, I'll let you cover that unless you'd like us to.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, council members. So essentially what we're seeing in our areas of operation is we're seeing a 7 to 10% roughly software increase with most of our contracts at the end of their contracts. And I can tell you our Axon contract was up last year and it was a significant increase. Way above that, and the issues that we're running into is actually storage costs with most of our records. And we had an opportunity, our team had an opportunity to meet with Wyoming State Archives today. They presented to the city, and what we're finding out is their recommendations for retention is significantly more than a lot of even the state legislation or legislature requires. So we're trying to navigate that and make sure that we're currently retaining records that we may need to keep for longer than we suspected. So a lot of those software cost increases that we're seeing, at least in our areas, is due to the retention of records, especially with body-worn camera, and then all of our dispatch recording software. We keep all of that for court purposes for a minimum of 3 years, and depending on the type of case, it could be a lifetime retention. And that's where we're seeing most of these costs. Some of it is increases to hardware costs. I can tell you that I was recently appointed to the Governor's Public Safety Communications Committee, and our intention, hopefully in the interim, is to bring a bill forward that would increase our ability to retrieve additional costs. The cost that we're currently retrieving is not even close to half of what we're expending on the LARC budget side. So what we're hoping to do is get a bill passed that would allow us to charge up to $5. And there is some significant support for that with our PSAPs across the state, our supervisors in dispatch and records across the state, and we haven't had a significant increase in that fund for several years. I think it's over 10 years if I recall exactly. Yeah, so it's time. Right now, the city and the county are covering most of those costs, and the E911 budget is simply supplementing what we're using for managing our emergency response communication systems. So if that's the case, the bill that is proposed currently or that is in draft form would require local governing bodies to approve the amount that we would charge our citizens. So that potentially could make it on your desks here in the next year or so. And hopefully we'll have some support for that over in Cheyenne. And I think that covers most of it. I'll take any questions. And Jen, if you had anything to add on that one, I appreciate it.
Questions or comments? Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Brown. What's the minimum length of time you would store any information? You know, you said some for 3 years, some for, you know, a lifetime, depending on the case. Is there a minimum acceptable?
Through you, Mayor?
Yes.
Council members, so every crime has a different classification, and currently the State Archives, I believe, is recommending a minimum of 3 years for non-criminal contacts, like just a body-worn camera video where I'm having this conversation with you. Currently ours is 3 months, so if we have an incident that occurs, I stop to talk to, a kid who's going on a ride, those are all recorded, every citizen contact is recorded, but there's no criminal nexus, so those are a 3-month retention. And the reason for that is to give the community time if they have any complaints regarding the service that they received. And 3 months, in my opinion, is sufficient. The state legal requirements have also supported that, but now we're starting to see the FOIA request requirements kind of at odds with our evidentiary requirements, retention requirements. So we're working with that with the state archives and also some legislatures over some of our legislation up in Cheyenne. So the minimum for right now for us is 3 months.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? I see none.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm like, who's going first? I also wanted to touch base, if we could, Chief, and I didn't tell you this ahead of time, so I can certainly address this, but I wanted to touch base on the opioid settlement fund, which is on page 276 of your workbook. This isn't squarely in the chief's wheelhouse, but is tangential to police department, as it is also tangential to fire EMS. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about this to orient the council to what this fund even is. It's one of our newer funds. This is a fund that we established following the national opioid settlement with the manufacturers of opioid pharmaceuticals. It was a class action lawsuit, I believe. And the outcome of that national lawsuit was that affected jurisdictions receive settlement monies, and so the city really did nothing. These monies were just part of the settlement agreement that the drug companies reached with the claimants. We are accruing funds into this segregated account right now. It looks like, Jen, correct me if I'm looking at the wrong, but we have $231,369 in actual receipts, or no, yes. Am I on the right page? I'll let you talk about revenue, and then we'll talk about expenditure. Okay. There is more funding to come. I think we will likely end up with, I think it's over $2 million. The county is also receiving proceeds from the national settlement. I convened a meeting a number of months ago, probably now over a year ago, with some county officials and city officials, wondering if the county would like to work with us to develop a strategy for how to reinvest these funds. There are requirements around how you can use these monies, and you can imagine what those look like. They are needing to be used to address opioid addiction, addiction treatment, and other outcomes of opioid or addiction, opioid addiction or addiction generally, and drug addiction. So you have this as a goal this year under the city attorney to bring together that city-county group and try to devise a strategy for reinvesting these funds into our community according to the guidelines we've signed on to. I introduced that only because I know the chief has had maybe just some really early ideas about how the police department might utilize these funds. Nothing is set in stone. He's talked briefly with the city attorney. I'm not sure where Bob is at on this. It's probably something we should ask and have him come and talk about. But I thought I'd cue you up to talk about maybe some envisioned uses within your department, since I know you've thought of that.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. So the way that I had looked at this, the usage is a three-prong approach, and I believe it's permissible within the requirements of the fund: enforcement, treatment, and engagement. And working with the city attorney, some of the ideas that we have come up with, and I think that he's looking into further, was kind of a three-prong approach. The first one is something the school district has been asking us for, and that would be drug-sniffing dogs. So potentially we'd like to use some of the funds to get one, maybe potentially two drug-sniffing dogs. And that would include retrofitting our unit, training our officers, and then also the purchase of the two dogs. And potentially some funds, like endowment-type funds, to secure that program in the future. I can tell you there is support in the community for that, with some of our nonprofit partners who would be more than happy to pay for veterinary fees or support us with veterinary fees and food fees. And then the second one was continuation of the ACT program. And as we know, opioid addiction often leads to mental health issues, significant mental health issues or mental health crisis. So my other thought is that's a program that benefits all areas of the county and all three law enforcement organizations and then the VOA. So hopefully some funding set aside to continue that position to make sure that it's going to be available to our organizations for the foreseeable future. And then the third one was to work with the downtown clinic and VOA to make sure that we have some rehab options for members of the community. And I think the majority of the fund would probably go for that, or the majority of the settlement funds would go for that. And I think that's appropriate. I think that's really where we can help our community members the most, especially when you look at drug court, the partnerships that they have, and the rehab partnerships that they have, not just here, but they have partnerships in Colorado and also Utah. So that was my idea. I think the city attorney was supportive of that. He is looking into that further just to make sure it's permissible. But I do anticipate having a request for at least the drug dogs, our portion of it, our organization, which I guess answers the city manager's question, here in hopefully the next month before the council.
And just to wrap that up, the working group that would be convened between city and county would involve, obviously, the chief, Fire Chief Johnson, county attorney, drug court officials, VOA, and the Albany County Sheriff's Office. So kind of convening those technical experts in this realm to make a recommendation to the governing bodies. This budget makes no recommendation to you, but I just thought it was timely to maybe plant the seed that it's coming forward.
Councillor O'Doherty.
I'm just really uncomfortable with the drug sniffing dogs. I guess the school board is asking for that, because I can imagine a kid whose parents are addicts and the drug dog singles them out. But I also know that our police department is pretty smart, and you wouldn't be dragging some kids out based on suspicion because of a dog. But we don't have to get into it here, but I just want to say that narc dogs kind of worries me.
Through you, Mayor. So I actually had the request from the principal of the high school, and then I spoke with the superintendent of it, who's extremely supportive and thought that they would have school board support. And then the question comes, like, what is our response? Are we going to be putting handcuffs on kids? That's never our response at the school. So our response is to work closely with the supervision, the administrators of the school, and always give them the first opportunity to address the situation as they see fit. Now, there is a difference between vapes, marijuana, and somebody selling fentanyl, right? So I think there is that aspect. And then also quantity. If you're talking about maybe one joint versus a kilo of cocaine, there's probably a different response. So I think just like we do with any other school issue, and actually our SRO budget right now is sitting in front of the school board. They're having their meeting right now, too, to approve our SRO budget, and Lieutenant Tom Smith is there for that. But they've been great partners, and we look at every single situation that happens at the school on a completely, everyone's different, because like you said, it really does depend on the student's specific situation at that time, and we'll meet them where they're at and give them the resources that they need. But that's always our goal, especially in the juvenile realm.
Further questions, comments? I see none.
Thank you.
Mayor, I thought it might be helpful to the council to know how we are recommending appropriations for this fund. And so basically what we're doing is we're taking all the available fund balance we have when we're at the point of preparing the budget and recommending that as a lump sum appropriation. And then what happens is that, of course, the chief will come behind, or the city attorney, and propose the use of that funding through various programs. But the appropriation is actually there already. And so this next year, you can see that $556,000 does represent the actual cash we have on hand from these settlements to date. As the city manager said, it is, rounding up to about $2 million, but not all of that is in hand. Much of it will be paid over a period of time, and that is subject, of course, to things like corporate bankruptcy. And so if any of that happens, we may not get some of these funds, and we may have to revalue our receivables. And so a little bit unique for government to have these receivable amounts that are subject to those kinds of risk.
Okay.
So I think that concludes police. Are you wrapped, Chief? Anything you'd like to add?
Through you, Mayor, once again, I'd just like to thank the council for your continued support with our organization and the city, so thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Mayor, if you're ready, we can move to, it looks like we have a hand.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you. Sorry, this is coming in a little late, but is there an opportunity at all to use some of those funds to set up some sort of a fund that kind of earns like an endowment fund of some sort, so that we can ensure that that ACT program is paid for the long term? Is that an allowable way to use those dollars? Or do we know?
Mayor, through you to Vice Mayor, there's about 5 or 6 pages of eligible uses, and some of those eligible uses are very general. And so I think that there is a fair amount of flexibility as long as there's a vision and a documented purpose. And so if we were to look at a program like that, I think if it were set up in the right way, as long as it fell under one of those general guidelines, we could probably do something if that was the priority of the council.
Great, thank you.
I had one last question. Is that 500,000 plus in an interest-bearing account? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So while these folks switch places, I can talk about the city attorney's budget, and I am pinch hitting for Bob Southard tonight. Clearly, I am not him. But I had a conversation with him this morning, and really the change to his budget being recommended is very small. So I'm on page 62 of your workbook, and you will see the adopted budget for the city attorney's office is $771,727. This is a very small office, and so as you know, in those small offices, most of the budget is for personnel expense and employer expense related to that employment. In the city attorney's office, 78% of that amount I just stated is tied up in personnel. So they have very little room to adjust to changes in costs of materials and supplies, or in the case of the city attorney's office, contractual legal services. As you know, the city attorney and the prosecuting attorney in that office perform legal services for the city, but we also, depending on the nature of the work, contract for outside legal assistance. And what's being recommended to you in this budget is $10,000 additional for contractual fees to cover the acquisition of outside legal services. Largely, this is coming from your planning, zoning, and code administration department as they enforce the city municipal code for zoning violations or for code violations. There just is oftentimes a need for some additional bandwidth for legal work in this area, and so that request came from planning and development and is recommended by me, and I spoke with Bob today. What he had said is, let's remember that 10,000 doesn't go that far, but we think that it will be sufficient in the short term at least, and we'll evaluate what that looks like and bring you back a different number for the new biennium next year if needed. So did I sound like Bob? Did I channel Bob? Okay. Good. Okay, good. Well, I told him I'd make sure to let you know that you could reach out to him if you have other questions. Okay, so with that, we will shift gears. And I believe Director Wade is up next with Administrative Services, and we're moving to page 79 in your booklet.
So Administrative Services is one of the smaller departments in the city. You'll see this often with the departments that are more like professional services. And of course, finance and the administration of the municipal court certainly fall into that category. So those two divisions are what make up Administrative Services. I have no supplemental request. We don't need any more budgetary appropriations. In fact, you'll see some centrally budgeted items to reallocate some of our software fees for our our old software product over to utilities because, well, utility billing is going to be really the primary operation on that former software effective this January. And so we're just doing some reallocating there. So it's a decrease in my operation and an increase in other. And that's a good opportunity to educate you a little bit on centrally budgeted items. And so these items are prepared by the budget team in a non-biased way to move money around or increase rates in a consistent fashion to things like utility accounts or software maintenance fees. Of course, the budget team also prepares the base personnel forecast. Again, that's done in a very objective way. And so you'll see in my division some little movements in personnel. Those are just adjustments based on the most recent forecast in the payroll software at a point in time. And so you'll see some decreases and some increases, but literally it's just adjusting that base budget because remember, we do that zero-based every year. year. And so we don't let people hold on to funding. And so you'll see some of those reductions. And so just a little bit of education there with a good example from my division that is probably pretty easy to understand because I am a smaller department. When you look at finance, I want to talk just a minute about the activities that we do, because the breadth of services that we offer in the finance function is something that I think most people are not aware of. Of course, we perform basic, what I would call business services. When I say business services, I mean things like billing, collections. The biggest billing operations is utility billing. So those city utility bills, those come out of my department. Accounts payable, payroll and timekeeping administration, cash receipting and control. So I consider those to be very basic business services. Those, of course, are administered in finance. In addition, we have treasury, investment management, debt management, accounting, and by that I mean technical accounting, financial reporting, financial planning, budget, preparation, and the design and evaluation of citywide internal controls for business systems. So as you know, there are operations like the landfill or the rec center that do take their own cash and have a business function. Those business functions exist and operate independently. However, we are still responsible for ensuring that the internal controls around those operations and the way those transactions are accounted for are appropriate. And so it's an interesting operation because we do have a citywide reach, but still with a decentralized model. So it's a pretty, I think, rewarding way to do it. We also dabble in things like grant compliance, and so there's an awful lot of breadth to keep you busy, and it's something that I very much appreciate about our work. And one of my favorite pieces of work that we've done in the last year, of course, is additional work with transparency. I really feel that that falls into financial reporting, but most of the time when you hear that term financial reporting, you think of things like the ACFR, and that's just not very exciting for most people. And so I think one of the opportunities that we have in government is to really communicate better with our public about what's going on with their finances, because it is kind of personal. The public should consider those funds public funds because they are. And I do agree with the label we sometimes hear, well, those are my tax dollars. Like, you're right about that. You are right that that is public money. And so that's one of the big pushes that we have in my area, is to really think about that in the finance division. And like all finance divisions, we strive to operate as leanly as possible because we are, while we're important, we're overhead. And so just like in the private sector, one of the ways we evaluate our performance is basically with our efficiency. And one of the ways that we become more efficient is through the use of software. Thus, all of the software implementations that you're seeing us doing. And so I will be so excited, and I think Jen will be too, to get through our 5-year project or 6-year project. We are halfway through those phases. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we are just trying to do the best we can do. I like to hire people who believe in public service and who believe they can creatively perform very professional work, because when you get people who believe in what they do and you give them some freedom, really good things happen. And I think that that is something that sets us apart from, say, going to work in finance for a corporation, which probably maybe you don't have as much creativity, certainly at an entry level. So it's kind of how we run it. It does seem to be working. We did a big department reorg in 2021. That is actually having some really good impacts. It directed a few more positions into back-end finance, more of that accounting, financial reporting, transparency arm, and a few less into our customer-facing arms, because we are cross-training staff in our customer-facing operations, municipal court and utility billing, to help each other at the counters. And so we've been able to not grow staff and actually provide higher levels of services because of the reorganizations that we've done. When you look at what we accomplished in the last year, I just want to make sure that I give a shout out to our team. I know it seems like ages ago that we went live with AERP, but it was only 15 months ago. And after you go live, you still have to close out your fiscal year in the new software. And so we were actually kind of going live with finance until November. And in October, we started the payroll phase of the project. Jen Malmberg is actually the pretty much the functional lead over that project for the payroll component. That phase is going really well. It goes live in January. And of course, at the same time, we're going live with open finance, transparency. We've got the popular annual financial report, that community financial report, and the budget in brief, and the work with the city manager on the budget advisory committee. And so I'm really proud of this group. There's a lot going on. And we'll throw the storm drainage fee on top of that. And everyone is smiling and doing well most days. There's some days when we leave and our eyes are red and I'm like, I hope we're okay tomorrow. But we are doing some really great work, and I am super excited to see what happens over the next year. So let's maybe talk about that next year a little bit in terms of what I see and the goals. But first, I want to celebrate something that is really special that I've been waiting to do. There are now 2 CPAs at the city. Jen actually earned her CPA certification in March. And not only am I just so proud of her, because that is such a professional commitment, but it is so important for the city to have another CPA on site. I cannot even tell you how much the environment has changed for governmental accounting since I started practice in 2011. And you really, really need advanced professional knowledge to be able to do a good job and do that efficiently. And we have that, and I'm so grateful. And so thank you for honoring her and for letting me celebrate that. As we look at next year, we will not only go live with the payroll and HR phase of our ERP project, but we will kick off the utility billing phase sometime this fall. We saw a demo of the utility billing product just a couple of weeks ago. I was really impressed. The customer-facing component of that is going to be really cool. Director Webb was also impressed, which is why I feel I can say that to you, because there is a really big GIS component and meter component to that project, which impacts his staff. And so I wouldn't say that unless I knew we were on the same page, but we'll start that section, and I think the public is really going to get some benefit. So you'll be able to get in and really map your usage, and we'll be able to push out information to our customers in a way that we can't right now. Additionally, we will also support the efforts of the council and other staff to renew the 5th and 6th penny taxes. Those are such important taxes for us. And so we'll do whatever we can to support you in that process and provide you with information. Of course, we're going to help ensuring that the city is fiscally sustainable. So you can expect us to continue talking about the long term. So not only the history, but the future of where we think our revenue is going to be in all of our funds. You'll see us doing that with our general fund analyses. You'll see us doing that with our financial planning for our utility services. And this council will get to go through that really cool exercise of evaluating the results of the water, wastewater, and solid waste studies in the next year. So some big stuff coming up in that sustainability conversation. There, of course, are some council goals that I'll be helping with, and we'll be doing a lot of interim legislative monitoring. And so some of you may already be aware of this, but the Joint Revenue Committee and the Joint Appropriations Committee are already talking about sales and use tax distribution changes. So already, if you look at the committee agendas, you'll see that coming up in June, if you guys are interested in following those conversations. And so just like we were talking about last week, there are some risks, and maybe those end up being good conversations for us. And so I'm going to go into that hoping that that is the outcome, but we may need to be part of making that the outcome, right? So lots of interim work this year legislatively. We will also support with the rollout of our new in-house management for EMS billing, so definitely a financial component to that. I'm so happy with the firm that the chief chose. I was part of that selection committee. They're a publicly traded firm. They have a strong compliance arm, and they have fantastic financial software, which I really like. And it's going to make sure that we get those financial transactions recorded and we get those amounts collected, which can sometimes be difficult to collect. I will also hope to be engaging with you about revisions to our investment policy. And so with more funds on hand than we used to have, we really do need to take a look at our investment policy. We need to decide what that strategy is. And then based on the result of that conversation, we may go out and issue an RFP for investment advisory services. But that really will be informed by our work together. So that's what I see ahead for finance in the next year. For municipal court, the operation is a little bit simpler. Remember that operation provides administrative support for the judicial system in an impartial fashion. So you all appoint the municipal judge, the court staff report through administrative services. So what I like about that model is it keeps it nice and impartial, and it makes sure that those court staff actually serve not only the needs of the judge, but they serve the needs of the police department, and to a certain extent, they coordinate with the city attorney's office, and they really do a lot of work there to keep those wheels moving and making sure everything is going as it should. They're very proud of the new diversion program. They love working with the LPD, doing anything because the department is progressive and they're just fun to work with. And so that is a very small department. There's only 2 FTEs, but they're passionate about what they do and really bringing people together, I feel, and supporting defendants and making sure that it's accessible are a big part of what they do. That group is working on getting some materials translated into Spanish, making sure that staff can have meaningful conversations with people who don't have English as a first language, because that's a real barrier to communication and transparency. We're also working on that in utility billing. And so again, just really proud of these groups of people who work hard every day to make sure that what we're doing is as good as it can be, and being innovative, and, you know, utility billing people going out and clerking in the court, which, you know, is a little nerve-wracking for them, but they do it anyway, and they're doing it because they know it's part of the vision. With that, I am happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Wade. Questions, comments? It's hard to see a yellow hand against a yellow background. All right. Thank you so much. And I always appreciate your explanations. And I just, as you were talking, I started thinking of like a word cloud. And it's a word cloud that kind of permeates our conversations. And I started just writing down what those words were coming to me, and sustainable, progressive, proactive, transparency, engagement, visionary, and that we're looking to the future, and we're taking care of business, and we're fixing the roof when it needs to be fixed so we don't lose the house. So thank you.
Thank you. You just made me cry a little. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So do I.
Right.
Oh, efficient. Oh, that's creative. And creative. I think we should do our own word cloud. Yeah. Because it permeates the entire organization, whether it's Director Wade, Director Webb, Director Ward, the chief. It permeates everything. It is our theme and our mission.
They are values we share.
Yes.
All right,
Okay.
next.
So just wrapping up administrative services, as Director Wade mentioned, the net change in their budget is a decrease of 1.9%, just based on centrally budgeted adjustments and no addition. And with that, we are ready to go to one of, again, our larger departments, which is Parks, Recreation, and Public Services. Council, we're going to be on page 68 of your workbook. And Director Bork, I will turn it over to you to talk about the past year and goals for the upcoming year and your supplemental requests.
All right, thank you, Janine. So I've been here just over 8 months now, and I have to say, being able to work with Janine, with Director Wade, with the chief, every day has been an absolute pleasure to come to work. It has not been stressless. There's been a lot of learning curve, but really, truly, and I want to echo what the chief had said. Really, thank you all for the work that you do and the time that you spend. Every day has just truly been amazing working here at the city. So thank you as my preamble. Jumping into the department and all of the learning that I've gotten to do over the last 8 months. So generally speaking, I don't feel that we have made a lot of supplemental requests, and the requests that we have made, I believe, are truly things that are needed, not necessarily things that were missed in the initial budget creation, just as things have come up, additional things that have been needed, either that were identified by management staff in my 3 different divisions, or by myself in looking at how I think we need to start moving the department forward. That's been kind of the overall theme, is really looking at small changes over the course of time to really bring the department into the vision that I'm starting to create, along with my management staff and supervisory staff. So with that said, going into our past goals and then our objectives for the upcoming year. Again, this is just the general fund, so we'll be starting with the facilities division. This is the division that has gotten some of the most attention by me in the first year that I've been here, or 8 months that I've been here. Just based on how it has been set up and operated, and how I think it needs to be set up and operated. And really what it comes down to is the way that it was set up as kind of commingled and intermingled in with the recreation center and how it operated. And so what I really wanted to do was decentralize that away from the other functions, to still be supportive of Parks and Recreation and the entire city, with the 26 different buildings, all the way from our small way station out at landfill, all the way up to this facility and the recreation center, and really allow them to focus on what they're needing to be doing, which is preventative maintenance, building repairs, environmental services, custodial services. And the way we were set up and the way we were organized at the recreation center didn't hinder that, but I think it is a better setup the way that we're moving towards and have moved towards. So you'll see in some of the objectives and accomplishments that we've had and reflected in the budget, some of those bigger changes and how that's been affected. So in 2025, the accomplishments, I'm not going to cover all of the accomplishments because we've got lots and lots of bullets through all of our different divisions, but replacing a lot of the aging equipment that we've got throughout the facilities, the rooftop units, HVAC units, air handling units, making roof repairs, just generally trying to bring all of our aging facilities. I mean, even the MOC, it's new, but it's 3 years old, over 3 years old. It's starting to get out of warranty, and so there's repairs that still need to be made. We have to do the preventative maintenance and keep up on, as well as some of our much older buildings, like this facility that we're in right now, and the 20-year-old recreation center. It's a constant, ongoing list. It seems like we accomplish one thing and 2 other things get added onto the list. But we have made some really good progress on a lot of those. In addition to that, even upgrading some technology, as you see, like wireless door access conversions. That's huge. In the old model, we would literally have to hook up a computer to each door code reader and program it to allow the access. Now that can all be done, except for the 2 buildings, and I'm not quite sure what those 2 buildings are. I forgot to ask Kevin when I saw him earlier today, but other than the 2 buildings that have not, everything's now remotely able to be controlled and accessed and upgraded. And so those are some of the main accomplishments from the last year. The stuff that we're really looking forward to for FY26 is continuing this organizational change and restructuring. As you see in FY25, one of the first things that we did is move our facilities to a centralized location. So they're now temporarily over at the old Street and Fleet building on 4th Avenue, right next to our park shop. That was both to give them a central location to all coalesce at in the mornings, but also to give them their own space. They were scattered all throughout the city. We had a lot of turnover. We had some morale issues. And I think that just this simple act of coalescing them into one location has really made, it's not the solution, but it was part of the solution to really, I think, provide some stability to that division. So we're continuing that. And as you can see in the notes here, we have an increase in the general fund obligation, but that's along with a requisite decrease in the recreation center fund, which we'll get to later. But what we did is there was a lot of funding that was allocated at the recreation center just for facility staff. Those staff were dedicated to that facility, but weren't necessarily operating out of that facility as they were all dedicated. They were going out and doing calls at various locations. So again, by centralizing the way that we have the operations, it required a financial move around as well. So that was impacted at both the Ice and Event Center and at from the Recreation Center Fund. But we're continuing that. It's an ongoing, evolving process. As you can see, we're standardizing some of our preventative maintenance schedules, standardizing environmental and custodial schedules. We're just continually trying to make that division as robust and as well-trained and as efficient as they can be, because again, 26 facilities spread all throughout the area, that's a lot for a group of 8 full-time employees to maintain, keep clean, fix, repair, and so it's an ongoing process, but it's going very well so far. Do you want me to stop at each division for questions, or should I just plow forward? It's really your pleasure.
I see no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Mayor. So we'll move on to the Parks Division. The Parks Division is, again, a very large, robust division with a lot of different responsibilities. Specifically to just the parks, you can see some of the accomplishments from 2025, replacing a lot of sidewalks, and that's actually that project we're doing more. If anybody's driven along Harney or around Labonte Park, there's some of that going on now, but in 2025, we replaced sidewalks at Kiwanis Park, the police department, and Shield Street, and that was all with an eye towards ADA access. Doing crack sealing and oil coating on about 4 of the 5.5 miles of the Greenbelt Trail. Replacing the Cowboy Field scoreboard, which I think a lot of you have heard was a great partnership between us and UW to get that upgraded and replaced. Boulders at Sierra Sky Trail, we have constant vehicular encroachment up off of that trail. We put boulders there, people move the boulders. We put more boulders there, people move the boulders. It's kind of, I think it's kind of a fun game for some people to figure out how to get around what we're trying to really just it's for public safety. We're trying to restrict the vehicular access because it is a multimodal, multi-use trail, but it also restricts people from doing what they want to do, which allows them, they find creative ways to get around that. Some other stuff, we removed 70 dead or hazard trees from parks and public areas. That doesn't sound like a lot, but remember we have one arborist and a very small seasonal crew to help do that. So 70 trees is a lot. In 2025, we completed the Spring Creek Phase 1 trail. As a corollary to that, the objectives for 2026 is we're beginning the work on planning for the Spring Creek Phase 2 trail, which I know we've talked about, that'll carry the Spring Creek Trail from 23rd Avenue down to 9th, to the 9th, and that'll be Phase 2. We hope for a Phase 3 and possibly even a Phase 4 after that. So in 2026, some of this is actually already ongoing. We were building this, I don't know, a couple of months ago, and so some of this has already started, but releasing the RFQ for the Optimus Trailhead All-Inclusive Playground, that has not started yet. We're waiting for the funds to be released from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, but we're already starting to put the plans together internally for what we want that to look like. Applying for grants to assist in the Labonte East Playground, which is not a really old playground, but it is an aging playground, and so we want to get that one replaced. The Coughlin Pole Mountain, that is one project that is actually in the design process right now, and we hope to potentially even have that already started by the end of this summer, maybe even completed. Just depends on how quickly that moves along. ADA benches, dog bag dispensers, and a covered seating area up at Sierra Sky pathway as well. And you saw we removed 70 dead trees. We're planning on replacing 60 trees in right-of-ways and in other beautification areas. That's just, again, that's actually going on now. And that does not include the over 110 plantings that we're making out at the Rotary Clubs Park property as well. Not all of those are trees, that's some shrubbery as well, but there's a whole lot of trees going in. They were just delivered this morning, so if you go out there, you'll see some flatbeds with trees out there. So that 60 is just in right-of-ways and other beautification areas. Parking lot resurfacing, irrigation central controls. I had brought an amendment to you all not too long ago, upgrading all of the sensors for our irrigation system. That project is near completion as we are bringing on our irrigation system. So that's been going well.
Councillor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Bork. I have a great recommendation for you for the playgrounds. I know one, and it may have been Labonte East at one time, had a sunshade over it. And my daughter cannot be out in the sun. She has a sun allergy, so we loved it. And then the last 2 summers, it's not there. And I know she's not the only one that can't be in high UV rays. And not only does she enjoy it, us parents, because sometimes sitting out there for 2 hours can be a little much. So if there's a way to incorporate that into the playground equipment, I know a lot of people that would really appreciate that, and more benches for parents to sit at the playgrounds too. And I'm sure that's been talked about, but it's sometimes you can't find a seat. So.
Through you, Mayor.
Yes.
That is something, we actually have that covered, the frame of that covered structure. The wind is, my understanding, is our big enemy on soft shade structures. So that to me just means that we need to be creative and figure out a different way to skin a cat, and look at other shade options. And there's a lot of great technology out there now for rigid shade towers that look like giant flowers that, you know, are strategically placed to provide, you know, maximum shade coverage. And other wind sail type of options that are more rigid versus large pieces of fabric that just they're going to rip and become torn. The UV is really rough here also, which is also hard on those shade fabrics, which causes them to degrade even more.
Thank you. I know our wind is it's horrible for everything. And the UV. We were just a few weeks ago in Colorado at a baseball game for a nephew at Greeley High School on the west side of town, and all their baseball fields, the bleachers were covered under those cloth shades. And what an amazing deal to not be stuck out there for 3 games or what have you. So maybe contact them and see what they use. I know their wind isn't like what we have, but they're still at a higher elevation and they do get some wind. So just an idea, because we found out that, and we were very excited for us to be able to sit there and not have to use umbrellas and all that kind of crud, you know.
Through you, Mayor.
Yes.
Absolutely. It not only shade, but I'm also researching some of the new technology on shade combined with misting technology, because when you can lower the ambient temperature around, and misting technology can lower it by anywhere from 20 to 30 degrees, that often is combined. But that is something that I've been working with Scott Hunter on. where can we include shade whenever possible?
Counselor Newman?
Nope, he just took what I was going to say, because I knew some of those towers that look like flowers are pretty cool, but I knew some of them had misting capabilities in them to kind of help, yeah, so.
Any further questions, comments? I see none.
Okay, I'll continue on then with cemetery division. As you're aware, we were just talking about the cemetery at your last public meeting. Very large, very old cemetery, 14,000 grave sites managed by a very small full-time crew. So it's amazing to me what they managed to get accomplished. And I'll just, again, cover some of the highlights. It doesn't sound, necessarily earth-shattering or groundbreaking, to not to use a really bad pun, but upgrading our backpack mowers and push mowers to electric technology. As the city manager knows, I am a huge fan of technology, using technology where we can in our park system, and being able to switch over to electric technology with battery packs. It's still not great for the large scale deck mowers, but the small mowers, the small, string trimmers and smaller equipment, my goal is to get all of it switched over as much as we possibly can. Training new cemetery account clerk. That again, small changes, but getting that person trained to help us getting our deed records and cemetery records into control. And this year we're actually looking at adding some software technology that will bring our system up into an even more modern era. One of the things that I'm really excited about is working with cemetery districts and our state legislators to update the columbarium structural requirements. So that was passed at the last legislative, or the 2 legislative sessions ago, I believe it was. So that's going to allow us to move forward with our columbarium design and construction using better materials that are not mausoleum based and much more expensive and difficult to build. So those are I would say the highlights from 2025. In 2026, just continuing maintaining that old historic property. So laying out and putting corner markers in the old Potter's Field section, reconciling those deed records like I had talked about. Purchasing a new tow-behind air compressor. Right now, we kind of borrow amongst both us and Public Works for these air compressors every time we need to blow them out. Problem is, we would love to have our own and try and use it more, but realistically, we only use it for a small amount of time each year. But when we're using it, it's very important to get those irrigation lines all blown out to prevent any kind of blowouts or breakages in the wintertime. So that's about it on the mosquito section. Does anybody have questions? On the cemetery. Or sorry, on cemetery. Mosquitoes next.
Okay. Questions, comments? Councilor O'Doherty.
I didn't think I wanted to be buried, but now I want my tombstone to be a solar panel for you to plug in all your devices. Let it be known.
USB ports.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Bork, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. Did you say you all are hoping to plan to mark those burial sites that are unmarked currently?
Mayor, through you, not mark all of the unmarked. We're putting corner markers in the old Potter's Field. So marking out where they are, but not necessarily identifying who's there.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
Okay. Continuing on to our mosquito control, forestry, and integrated pest management division. Again, a very active division, especially this time of year. They're gearing up, and we're already applying larvicides and getting ready for our summertime fogging and insecticide applications, as well as we've already started weed spraying. If you've all noticed, mosquito or dandelions are popping up all around in town, and so we've already started our integrated weed control plan as well. So highlights of 2025, completed our emergency integrated mosquito, I forget what the A stands for, grant reimbursement for our mosquito operations. That offsets quite a bit of our mosquito control operations. The new chemical storage area was completed, which has been very valuable. A lot of training and co-working with other counties and communities in the area. Updating the mosquito control traps to better technology and just newer traps. They were getting old. And our integrated pest management spray equipment, replacing it with a single unit that is more efficient. And looking towards 2026, we are going to be evaluating our mosquito fee structure. It's been a number of years since the mosquito fee has been looked at. Our costs have gone up, and I don't think in line with necessarily covering everything that I think it could. So we're going to be making some recommendations to the PTR board this fall, and then ultimately to you all to increase that. And I really am proud of the work that our staff does on working with other mosquito districts for the West Nile testing, tick testing in the area, even as close as our neighbors over in Kirk County, getting ticks and identifying and testing those. And finalizing the new lab space. It is almost fully complete now, which is going to be a huge boon to our lab techs and testers to have a contained space within the mosquito shop to work and do the everything from the sexing to the testing to collection data. So really a lot of robust, great things looking forward to in 2026 or 25, 26, FY26. So any questions on mosquito control, IPM, or forestry?
Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Bork. This is just a question from curiosity. In your graphs, your collection graphs on page 70 and 71, the level we're seeing in 2021, is that COVID attributable? Is there a reason that's? It's just such a drastic difference. I'm just curious.
Mayor, through you.
Yes.
My understanding is it didn't have anything to do with COVID. It's really more of a cyclical thing that we'll see. And the graph, there's not this one in here, but Hunter, our entomologist, has an interesting graph that kind of shows how we get spikes that go in waves. And so I believe, if I'm remembering what he had told me, is that spike in 21 was not really a COVID related thing. It was more of, it was on that higher end cycle.
Cyclical for the.
Yeah, but city manager may have better.
I will admit through you, Mayor, I didn't hear the question. I think you were talking about the chart with the trap counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
70 and then also 70.
Yeah. Yeah, with respect to the trap collection, obviously the climate, right? The wetness of the spring or lack of wetness can affect the mosquitoes. We need to have Hunter come and do a work session and bring us trap counts and speciation
I think that would be fun.
specimens.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't mean to get us into the weeds.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting
It is.
comparison, and I'm
Yeah,
curious.
it is. When we have a wet spring, of course, what they'll tell you is, the mosquito eggs are laid, and then when water touches them, they sort of activate and start to grow. And so, for instance, when, like, you look at this spring, we don't see much water in the river, right now, and the areas that flood around the river are not flooding. If and when they do, then they activate the mosquito and the larvae grow. So those trap counts are, I am sure, related to temperature and the amount of water and precipitation in the spring and through the summer months. So I think you're right, Mike, but there's a little more detail.
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Bork. If you had requested $40 million for mosquito control, I'd give it to you. And I'd lobby this whole council to give that. It's such a problem in Laramie. And I know there's a whole science, right, as to when you start to spray and fog and all the stuff and why. And I know that because the city did a really great job last summer of putting out some awesome infographics. So I learned a lot from those. But I'm just wondering from curiosity, because I feel like by the first time that I, hear or see those fog trucks, man, it's too late. We're all dying. And so I'm wondering is it like a budget thing as to why they don't start sooner, or wind and temperature?
I know the
Okay.
answer to that.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Councilor Doherty.
Yeah, I studied aquatic ecology. But one of the problems we had last summer is that, you do the larvicide before they start emerging, but the adults, it's a different spray. But every time they wanted to get out and do the spraying, it was the atmospheric conditions that prevented it, either because it was raining or not raining, or it was too windy. So it was, or the temperature wasn't just right. So it was like every night that they were planning to go out, there was some other thing that prevented it. But I was wondering, could we, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Continue.
I was wondering if it'd be an opportunity for some citizen science, because mosquito traps, don't you want one of those things that they use to trap the mosquitoes in order to speciate and all that kind of stuff? But maybe there'd be some opportunities for people to have traps all around, and then they could bring them in instead of having Hunter have to keep track of all the traps. It's like, well, I'll take a trap. Anyway, might that be an opportunity for
you, Mayor? I have not even started delving into all of the information surrounding mosquito control. I've just barely scratched that surface. And so I agree. I think there's a lot of opportunities for different ideas for citizen science. We did a great program in Fairbanks with pollination and creating citizen scientists on pollination. I don't see why we couldn't explore how we could do something along the lines of the mosquito control. So we will certainly look into that.
City Manager.
I'll hand it back to you, Mike, but I'm going to suggest, thank you, Councilor Vigil, for reminding us that mosquitoes are coming. There are seasons of being a city manager. Mosquito season is one of my least favorite, along with pothole season. Anyway, that makes me think, Mike, let's do, I'm looking at the schedule now, let's try to get Tyler in to do a work session with council to talk about our mosquito control program, because in about 3 weeks, they're going to hatch, and you guys are going to be getting tons of calls. So we'll try to empower you with some info in the next month, okay?
Sounds good.
Duly noted.
Okay.
Okay, so I will continue plodding along here in moving out of the park side and back into the Ice and Event Center. So as far as our goals and objectives, accomplishments from the last year, we're very excited. We don't have a firm date yet, but the Zamboni that we have ordered is being produced as we speak. We hope to get it earlier than, I think, the original target date of October. We're hoping to get it a little earlier than that. We were hoping to get it before we started building ice again, but that's just not going to happen. But it is on order, as is the electric ice edger, the new ice edger that we'll be getting. So we're excited about that. And you'll see, you'll see this across several of our divisions of implementing the master fee schedule changes.
Counselor Newman?
I had the same question for our new fire truck. So can we have touch a truck? And can we come play with the Zamboni too?
Through you, Mayor, not this year for this year's Touch a Truck, but we do have that on the schedule for next year's Touch a Truck. You cannot get on the Zamboni because Warm will be very angry with me. But to be able to look at and see the Zamboni, it is a super fun piece of equipment.
How about a private night for counselors
Make that happen if you want it to happen, yes.
to go drive it?
Driving is a different story.
Okay. Continue, please.
Okay. The other stuff related specifically to the Ice and Event Centers, we're making continuing improvements using specific purpose tax for doing like interior painting and more kind of aesthetic upgrades. New training system for ice grooming. So Courtney, our facility supervisor, has been really working on trying to standardize some training for new staff as they come in for both ice edging and grooming, as well as even the technology associated with taking ice out and putting it in and laying down the graphics in the ice and, you know, how to properly build a sheet of ice. It's not just going and flooding the water and hoping it freezes. There's actually quite a bit of finesse and technique to building good lasting ice. Tracking systems for equipment monitoring, that's going to be both for our rentable equipment like skates and helmets, but also tracking maintenance logs for things like our Zamboni and Ice Edger and making sure that we're on a good schedule for keeping them up and running. And we had an amazing growth in our adult hockey league this past in 2025. That's continuing. We are actually already booked out on our ice season all the way through to the end of 2026 already. So that will come into play, as I explained, one of our requests that is coming up as a supplemental request. But looking forward to 2026, we are looking at the planned facility improvements as part of our youth sports facility feasibility study. And in fact, I just had an email from the hockey community today of wanting to re-engage and really look at improvements that can be made to the Ice and Event Center for either increased sheet of ice, as people have talked about, or year-round ice is being talked about. But all of those have costs and implications and staff implications. So we'll have to carefully examine that and look at the feasibility of that.
Counselor Newman?
How old is our ice center? Like the building?
Ooh.
Because the rec center's like 20 years, right? Or-
The Ice Center's much, oh, sorry, Mayor, through you. Ice Center's much older. Let me think here. It was actually built by the hockey club and then ultimately deeded to the city. And I would say it is easily 20-plus years old. Of course, the city, when we took ownership of it, it was a pretty rough facility. Not that it's amazing now, but the city's put a lot of money into improving it over the years. So certain elements of it are certainly newer than the original structure, which was kind of a metal building over ice sheet. Pretty rough.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. It is definitely over 20 years. I was actually thinking it was approaching over 25 years, I believe. And as the city manager described, it's not built how one would go about building an actual ice center. It was a chilled rink with a metal shell with very little insulation. The ice plant is aging very, very poorly. It's very difficult to keep some of that quality ice because of the fact that it's really just again a metal shell. So I think improvements are needed. I want to make sure that we do it in a strategic, smart way that is to the maximum benefit of the community. So you'll be hearing and seeing more about that this upcoming year. So just really to wrap up Ice and Event Center, we're again looking, we've implemented the master fee changes and
I have one other question. Counselor Freed?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Bork. And having played my entire D3 college hockey career in that ice rink, I really value the improvements that are going to be made. And this is kind of an off-topic question, so I apologize. And this might be directed for city manager, but wasn't there a penny tax that was voted on to pay for part of a new ice and event center, or for the updates for this ice and event center a few years ago? Or am I just misremembering?
There is nothing, I believe, in the 2018 SPT. Oh, Mike knows the answer.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. There was money in the SPT put aside for ice and event center improvements, but not, I believe it was $500,000. It was not to replace or add sheets of ice. It was to do some of the things that we've seen, the paint job, the painting that's been going on. We're looking at putting some additional safety tiles in the building. It's not all been used, but there was a little bit of money, but not anything to be able to make major improvements.
Thanks, Director Bork.
Okay, I'm just going to say that we're finished on ice and events unless there's other questions. All right. Rolling along, recreation programs. Oftentimes I've been finding that the community combines recreation programs and thinks that that's just the recreation center. Recreation programs is much more than the stuff that goes on at the rec center. This is a lot of our sports and both youth and adult sports programs. And it also, recreation includes our work with the Laramie Public Arts Coalition and our public art displays and beautification. So recreation is more than just the Adventure Kids program, which is what I think a lot of times people think about. So our accomplishments in 25, again, talking about phase 2 sculpture installations at the Snowy Range Bridge with LPAC. Our field painter, we've talked a lot about that, the robot field painter. I love just being able to say it saved us 75% in person hours. I didn't catch that, man hours, but saved 75% in personnel hours associated with field striping and 60% in paint costs. That's huge, and that is one of the reasons why we decided to ask ACRB funding to just outright purchase that piece of equipment, because in the first year we just saw such a payback on that, and we are expanding our field striping for this upcoming, as we speak right now. We've seen marked increases in youth sports registration. Youth programs, our NFL flag football program was up 33% over what was expected in the first year, and our overall sports participation is up 18%. And we not only developed the bid package for the Laramie Bike Park, it is out on the street right now. We actually have already had our pre-proposal meeting, and the initial qualification bids are due at the end of this month. And there's a good possibility that we hope to actually start moving dirt by the end of the summer, if at all possible. So we're very excited for that. I know BikeNet and the other community biking supporters are very excited about that as well. Looking forward into 2026, complete the construction of the bike park. Obviously, our new 2026 Summer Youth Enrichment Program additions, we're developing those right now because we just recently, they haven't even started yet, but we have hired our new Youth Adventure Kids Coordinator position that will be taking over for Cynthia Stauffer's retirement. So they're going to be starting here very soon, and part of that new position is going to be looking at expanding our youth enrichment beyond Adventure Kids, both after school and summer programs, and offering more and different varieties of programs, as well as adult recreation enrichment programs along those same lines, moving beyond outdoor sports and adventure programming into adult enrichment classes as well. So we're very excited about that. And with that, I will stop and ask if there's any questions.
Questions or comments? I see none.
Okay. I think we're moving to page 42 now, which are our operating supplemental requests. And so I'm just going to run through these, and if anybody has questions, I'll hopefully be able to answer them. Starting at about middle of page 42 under parks. Both parks and cemetery, they're really the same request. We have just seen increased costs in vehicle repairs and maintenance supplies, and we need to keep our rolling stock running. And so we're asking for some additional money in both of those areas for both of those sets of equipment, or for both of those divisions, I should say, for all of their rolling equipment and in that area. Within the Ice and Event Center, we had a reduction in FY 2025 for ice paint. And of course, right after that, the cost of ice paint went up considerably. So we're needing to make some adjustments. Ice paint is obviously very critical to having a good sheet of hockey ice. And so we need to make that request. And increasing costs for maintaining things like the little cogs and small pumps and things that just generally tend to go out right in the middle of hockey season, right before a game. Even with a new Zamboni, those will happen as well. These little pieces that'll just fail on us. So just some additional supplemental money in there. And then the next two sections, or really two big chunks of section, is in the administrative division, which is really my division as the director. Because there had not been a full director in the position for a number of years, this division just had not had a lot of funding in there. And so you'll see some supplemental things like legal advertisements for the PTR board meetings. In the past, it was being charged out of like recreation division or rec center division. So we wanted to make sure we had enough money in there for not just PTR board meetings, but all of our legal advertisements that we do for even our bid documents and projects, things like that. And then National Recreation and Park Association is, I've been a member with them since the late 80s. Late 80s, early 90s. And I believe wholeheartedly in the value of trying to have everybody be a member of our national association, both for networking opportunities, but we have a great online network of resources that members can get online and reach out to colleagues all across the world and ask questions. So this agency membership that you see here is something, it's one of the structures within NRPA where for one larger cost, all full-time employees have membership to the NRPA, to our national organization. So I think it's a very worthwhile program. I'm not saying that every full-time employee member will use it, but it'll be available to them. And that agency membership allows that. And then on page 43 is related, the first two items are related to, again, National Recreation and Park Association Revenue School and the NRPA Conference. So this, just a couple of months ago, I had the opportunity to attend year one of the National Recreation Revenue Development and Management School. Highly valuable program co-sponsored through North Carolina State University. This funding for here is supplementing my travel and training budget, basically, to allow me to attend the second year, which is the graduating year, as well as attend the national conference. I just did not have very much money in the administrative budget for travel and training. I also inherited a very small desk after an office area after the renovation was done over at the rec center. It's a teeny tiny small area with an old desk, so I'm requesting some funding to be able to replace my chair with something a bit more ergonomic and better suited desk for what I hope to create in that director's office. And then $500 minor request for supplemental. I really believe in making sure that we have all the relevant current publications that come out, things like the standard national standards on running parks and recreation facilities and programs. And we don't have a good library, so I'm hoping that we can have an ongoing amount of funding to start building that professional library.
I have a question from the Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Director Bork, If you could clarify for me, I thought I heard you say that the revenue school training, this would be your final and second year, but then the description says ongoing. I may have just heard you wrong. Could you just clarify that for me?
Honorable Mayor, through you. Yeah, so the 5,000 and 2,500 is an ongoing request for the travel and training. Specifically for next year, I'm requesting for Revenue Development School. There are other trainings and travel opportunities that either myself or other staff within the department or within the division, I would love to have as continuing ongoing beyond the next year's Revenue School. So next year, Revenue School, it's just a 2-year program, but it's an ongoing request for having that travel and training availability. It's, as anybody knows, if you've gone to a conference, between flights and hotels and registration, it's not inexpensive.
Okay, I've got one follow-up if I can, Mayor.
Continue.
Do you anticipate then that amount being for, one person to do training each year, or are there opportunities for different staff to attend, or is this specifically, you had said potentially other staff? Do you anticipate this needing to grow if you want more staff to attend training in the future, or because that's kind of...
Through you, Mayor. The answer is really both, and it just kind of depends what opportunities are coming up. I'll give for example, in I believe it's 2027, our national conference is in Salt Lake City. So we will be able to use less money for more people to be able to go, because that's something that we'll be able to drive to. So I don't have specific ideas beyond. I really am committed, as long as funding is available, for me to attend the National Parks and Rec Conference every year. I've attended for the last 26 years, I believe, if my count is correct. And it's an important, I'm also plugged into the national board and training networks and stuff. Any additional funding, this probably is not to cover all of the training and travel opportunities that I would love for staff to go to, but it was a way to start and start building into this administrative budget. This is not the only travel and training. There's travel and training set aside in the other divisions as well.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions, comments? I see none.
Okay, and so that covers the operating supplementals. Moving to page 45. There were some budget adjustments. Again, these were more in the central services that Director Wade had been talking about. So I don't know if you want me to go through the details on those, but really it's electric utilities and natural gas utilities, just adjustments to bump that up. So going down into the personnel requests, I believe that goes to page 46. At the bottom of page 46 is the number that you see that was pulled out from the Recreation Center Fund and added to the general fund for that facility management or facilities maintenance move that I had talked about. And that 253, 389, again, is broken up between the Recreation Center Fund and the Ice and Event Center, because we had staff allocated to both of those. And so you see that on the top of page 47, that Ice and Event Center number in there. But really the two big ones that I wanted to discuss is the request for a 1.0 FTE for the Ice and Event Center. Right now, that facility, as I told you, very popular, highly used, and it's all run with one full-time employee. It's run with provisional staff as well, but there are certain limits to what we can ask provisional part-time staff to do. My goal and my projection on this request is by having an additional full-time employee at the Ice and Event Center, we're going to be able to expand our program hours available at the facility, expand our program availability and new programs that could be offered during new hours, and just, again, having that second set of hands there. And my projection is that within the first year of that addition, we would be at offsetting at a minimum 25% of the cost of that position. And I expect a full payback within the first 3 years of having that position added on, just by being able to add on those new positions, those new programs and new hours, potentially, extended hours, off-peak hours for some leagues if that's an attractive option, and we'll be vetting some of that out as we explore that. But in general, for that facility's capacity to grow, even what the facility is right now, I really feel it's critical to have a second additional person there to act as essentially an assistant to the existing full-time supervisor. Any questions on that position before I move to the other?
Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Bork, I understand you need, they're spread pretty thin there. You're asking for 90,000 and change for one position. Can I get that position?
That also includes benefit rate as well. So
Okay.
that salary.
Thank you. That helps. That helps. Thank you.
That's combined. Is that correct, Director Wade?
Yeah, and Council Member Lockhart and other members of the council, I want to remind you that when we're budgeting for open positions, we budget at family health insurance, and the cost of family health insurance is $24,000 a year. And so if that helps give some perspective, of course, retirement is about 9%, and then we have the normal things like FICA, that 7.65% that you would expect.
Thank you.
Okay.
You know how to drive a Zamboni.
I think that's really what it was, is he's just wanting a Zamboni driver job.
Willing to learn.
The other position that I'm asking for is, again, within the administrative division. Right now, my administrative division does not have any provisional staff availability budget. And so I'm requesting $50,000. That's primarily for 3 potential positions. One in particular is trying to hire a provisional part-time marketing and advertising position to allow us to really focus. I think I've said this to the council before. We can keep increasing fees, but that has a diminishing return on it. And I really don't want to keep increasing fees to increase our revenue. What I really want to do is I want to market our programs to have more members and more people coming through the door, more people participating in programs. And our staff, none of my staff are trained in advertising and marketing. A part-time position is I'm hoping a start that we can actually monitor that person's progress and success, and potentially in the future turn that even into a full-time position. But I wanted to start with something that's provisional, part-time, 20 to 25 hours a week, specifically for increasing our social media presence, our web presence, updating and helping keep our website updated and get it a little cleaner looking. As well as also assisting our divisional staff in recreation and in the rec center on things like properly creating flyers and marketing campaigns. It'll be limited. Again, this is one person for 20 to 25 hours that I've got envisioned, but it's a start. And again, I hope to be able to track that and see a definitive payback in the increase in our participation and marketing outputs or inputs from that. The other 2 positions really are more kind of a formed idea right now. I've talked with the staff at the Worth program over at UW, the outdoor recreation, tourism, and hospitality program. And I really want to start bringing in some professional interns, but I don't like having interns be completely unpaid. And so there's an additional $20-ish thousand in that 50 to get 1 or 2 interns. It'll probably start with 1 that, lets people know, outdoor recreation, tourism, and hospitality, you can do almost all of those things in municipal parks and recreation as well. And so be able to hopefully start building that relationship. I've spoken with Dan McCoy several times and really want to start building that relationship. So that's the $50,000 request, is for that marketing and advertising, and then the idea of getting a couple of interns. Any questions on
Questions or comments? I see none.
Council, if I can dovetail, Mayor, a little bit on what Director Bork said. I wanted to point out what is probably obvious after Mike has gone through the requests in this department. And since we've saved the best till last, if you ask Mike, undoubtedly. I'll mention that it's probably notable to you that the request in this department and what I'm recommending you fund is greater than in the other departments. So I want to acknowledge that out of the gate. I also want to acknowledge and Mike's done a good job covering the individual requests, but I want to kind of share the philosophy behind why I agreed with him on these requests, and I'm recommending them forward to you. The first is that this department directorship has really been vacant for about 7 years. You know, we should have 8 or 9 department heads, and we ran with 5.5 for way too many years, like 6 years. We anticipated doing that for a year or 2, and then COVID happened, and that turned into 5 and 6 years. So having the position vacant, you've heard Mike say, like, there's not really a chair or a desk, or, you know, I mean, people pilfer offices that are vacant around here, recycle things and kind of dumpster dive. So I wanted to make sure that we set this new director up for success. And so that means simple things like having a chair, having desk, but it also means maybe having some of the personnel resources. And I bring up your goal that talks about making sure staff have enabling resources. And I really took that to heart. It's unusual that a council adopt goals like that and acknowledge that the enabling resources, whether it's having a decent desk or it's having a little bit of staff support, can really be a make or break to enable a department to be successful. So for that reason, what I have recommended to you from what Mike brought forward is $559,333, which is a 13% increase in the cost of this department's operations. There are personnel involved here in terms of the part-time positions that Mike has noted. We've also, I'm recommending for the full-time position assistant at the Eisen Event Center. I did that trying to honor the council's direction to make sure that staff are enabled and have the resources they need, but also giving a nod to where can we apportion enabling resources with a return on investment, right? And so, for instance, we really hope, and I have faith, that much of the investment we're making here will return through revenue, and I know Mike says he's anxious to go to Parks and Rec Revenue School, but one of the reasons that we hired Director Bork was that he has extensive experience in that area already, and I want him to be able to have better marketing, have better personnel, have more staff bandwidth, so hopefully they can generate more revenue and support these positions. So I wanted to share the philosophy a little bit with you and just acknowledge openly, this is a big ask, but this department has been not having certain resources for a period of time, and it's probably time to staff them up correctly. Happy to answer your questions.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you. And you kind of addressed this some already, the city manager, and that is making sure that we can track to see what those outcomes are. And my hunch is that having more resources will then actually bring in more money. And there was something else I was going to say, and now I totally forgot it. Spaced it. I don't know. Come back to it. Oh, I know what it was. Sorry. It was that the social media marketing person, I think about right now the load that Owen is carrying for the full city. And I would guess a substantial chunk of that is for Parks and Rec. So I think having an additional person to kind of support the work that he's doing feels beneficial to me as well. So that's it.
Councilor Richardson, thank you for that question. I would say this, though. The work that Owen, so I guess what I would say is if I think historically, the Parks and Recreation Department, even though we don't call them an enterprise fund, they really operate like an enterprise fund or a business. And because of that, they have to market, right? It's just part of the recreation gig. And so they have a pretty well-oiled machine out there and have been marketing actively their own programs and offerings for years and years. And really, most of what Owen does is not tied to Parks and Recreation. They have a machine out there. Mike is seeking to expand their capacity a little bit through these budget requests, but Owen does pretty light support for this department just because they've always had to promote programs. But thank you. That's a good point.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that, because I don't think if you had told me that before, I have totally forgotten it. So thanks for the reminder.
That's okay.
Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Bork. Just some thoughts and comments. First of all, I believe very strongly in the idea of like enabling employees through resources, but also through professional development. And so to see a new director after a vacancy really want to be able to kind of build that resource capability back up. In my professional experiences, not in municipal government, granted, but those have been the most valuable experiences, is peer-to-peer learning. And I'm just very happy to see that reflected in this supplemental budget. And I think that speaks to my next comment, which is that if say, for instance, in yesterday's session, we're talking about our water infrastructure as being maybe the most important public safety mechanism that a municipality can have, or to me, Parks and Recreation and these sorts of activities are the most important public-facing aspect of what, the underlying health and well-being and quality of life in our community is. And it may be more a job for council to be communicating why that's important, I think, to the public when we're talking about increases, across departments, and one seemed so drastically larger than the other. But the resources that a city can provide in terms of what Mr. Bork's department does across the board, and we haven't even gotten to the rec center fund yet, is, people love them and don't understand necessarily just how complicated they must be. So without rambling too much more, I think it's maybe more inherent on council to communicate that to the public.
Councilor O'Doherty?
I think this dovetails nicely about the ICE Center with what Councilor Lockhart was talking about with the report from the Tourism Board, right? And that we need more winter tourism. And I assume they already have hockey tournaments out there. And to be able to cross-promote our other recreation opportunities with that, I think that'll really, with your desire to try to have more athletic fields and stuff, just to bring in more people, I think that would be great. So, sounds good to me.
Councilor Vigil?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money, but, or it seems like a lot of money, but in my mind, I've been charged in my relatively short career with building up a department twice, and it takes money. It just does, right? And so once you dig into this a little bit more, you can see just how frugal you're being. Like an ergonomic chair all by itself can be more than $1,200, right? Professional development, I just myself registered for a conference, and between the travel, registration, all that, probably going to be more than $5,000 when it's all said and done. And so when you look individually, and this is something I'm happy to communicate out to the public too, if I ever get questions, right? A lot of these pieces, they're just very modest and frugal requests in a lot of ways. So, yep, thank you.
I see no further questions at this time.
Okay, City Manager, where would you like to go next? I have page 84 talking about capital equipment and maintenance schedules.
We will note the time, though, and I realize it's council's decision how long you want to stay, but we are about 12 minutes over our dreamed for time, so we will be maybe brief, and then if you guys have questions, we'll stay as long as you'd like, but I also don't want to fatigue everybody since we're in the 3-week cycle of 2 meetings every week, so. I'm good, okay.
Okay, I will talk fast and less.
What is the page again?
Page 84.
Thank you.
So we're in the capital and capital maintenance equipment, and we've got just a few requests, so this shouldn't take long. We are requesting $20,000 for ball field light replacement. That's just kind of ongoing, upgrading our lights to LED technology. And we already talked about the $43,000 that's in the Albany County Rec Board. It's not really a new request for you all, it's just to purchase that turf tank. As well as in the cemetery division, a tombstone jack to help level and pick up tombstones as needed. It's a pretty specialized unitasker piece of equipment, but pretty critical, both for operation as well as the safety of our staff, to be able to operate it, less back challenges and using forklifts that aren't really meant to do that. So it's just a better piece of equipment technology. And that's all we had for requests out of the equipment and capital maintenance equipment. Okay, moving on to page 89 then. Under capital project summary, these are projects that are requested in the supplemental for Optimus Park baseball court replacement. So we are extending and replacing the size of the basketball court that's at Optimus Park. This would be in addition to the project of replacing and putting in the fully inclusive playground. Park sign replacement, if anybody's been over to the new Rotary Clubs Park at Grandview Heights, you'll see a new Rotary Clubs Park sign. That is the first of the model of replacing all of the signs through all of our parks to create some uniformity, to actually bring the signs in line with our sign code for the city. And so this money would go to be replacing all of the signs. And as you know, at a lot of our larger parks, multiple signs are required. Labonte, Laprelle, several of them require multiple signs. But that model that you see over at off of Bill Nye, all of our signs would begin looking like that. And then the $275,000 as part of your council goal of doing a youth sports study. I reached out to several subject matter expert consultants. We believe that this $275,000 is a good number to be able to do a comprehensive needs assessment and feasibility study. So with kind of business planning thrown in there, hopefully for the top, identified youth sports amenities or facilities that might be identified. I wanted to go beyond just outdoor youth sports and really look at all sports, including we know there's a defined need just based on usage for ice, as we've talked about. We're short on basketball courts, soccer fields. We've got improvements and potentially need for more ball fields. So this study would be comprehensive in scope, and hopefully really suss out both the needs from the community and the feasibility of their willingness to look at how it would be paid for, how any option would be paid for, as well as some of the feasibility business planning of would that be a sustainable project as well.
Council, I would note, I believe that this number also includes an economic impact analysis of those facilities.
Yes.
And while I know that was not discussed at your goal-setting retreat, based on really survey data that we've gathered this last year, I think that will be important if the study identifies that facilities are needed. Having that economic impact analysis will be essential to talk to the public about this, because support for recreation services seems to maybe be less favored right now than it was even 5 to 10 years ago in our survey data. So that's your option if you would like to have that, but I think it's a good move.
And that was it for that section. So,
Questions, comments? From here, I really can't see that little hand go up. Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just looking at that and hearing your comment, Janine, about the, folks being less inclined to support those sorts of things. Is there another route that we could look at that is a less costly, less broad study that maybe would be something around citizen sentiment about something like this? as a first step rather than the 275,000 for a real big study?
I'm happy to answer that, just with my own thoughts immediately, but I'll say, Vice Mayor, we were really simply trying to adhere to the goal that the council adopted. So I guess in some ways, I maybe have to turn the question back to all of you as to what you were hoping for here. And certainly if Director Bork has a professional opinion on that question, I'm happy to invite you to answer it.
Councillor Lockhart?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for your comment. In my opinion, I think it's necessary we do both because we find that there is a huge need. You're going to have to sell the sizzle to the community. And much like well, you think about it. Think about the new high school. How many people weren't for that and how many were, and how many people spoke about what it would do for the community versus just saying, here's this amount of money for a new high school. We need to know why and what it'll do for the community. As we all know, many parents here have children in activities all the time. And so I would say maybe some of these individuals that may not be wanting to invest in this may not have the children, but when you have the families out there that spend so much money traveling with their kids and the families that come into town, I think it would make sense to at least get that done too, the economic impact, in my opinion. Thank you.
And I would think that with a comprehensive study, there will be an element of community outreach, engagement, focus groups, et cetera, as we've seen with many other comprehensive studies that we have had. So I would anticipate that being a part of it.
Honorable Mayor, exactly. The first part is a needs assessment, and that's the community engagement part. Allowing the community in a multimodal, not just throwing a couple of public meetings together and seeing who shows up, but having an extended campaign of focus group and stakeholder meetings, online platforms that people can go on and engage in different ways to give their opinions and desires. Then what we're hoping, as I've envisioned it, is we follow that, we come up with what are the top themes that come out of that, and from those we prioritize and focus the actual feasibility study and economic impact study on some of those top, what rises to the top, what sizzles, so that we can then fully vet. Not necessarily, we're going to hear a lot of fringe sports that are, that they may be desired, but maybe not as community or broadly based or have as large of an economic impact by having things like tournaments and additional. So that was kind of the idea is you start with the needs assessment, you then prioritize, then you do your economic and other impact studies, and hopefully have a really good usable document that you all can use as future planning for whatever it is that comes out of that.
Great. Thanks for that conversation, everyone.
Thank you. Councilor O'Doherty?
Does such a broad scope study, though, give us time to try to get things in the special purpose tax list of things to fund? Like, would the study be done in time for us to say, here's the thing that the community said, we need more soccer fields, and so we want more soccer fields? Would that timing work out?
Director Bork?
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, through you, that's the hope. My goal is, if this is favorably acted upon, I want to actually start building the RFP documents now, so that come July 1, when the money is available, we can put it out on the street, get a contract out. It's expected between a 4 to 8 month process. Just really depends on how we build the scope and how robust of the first part, that needs assessment part, we engage in. But the hope is if there's going to be a vote sometime in 2026, it basically gives us the rest of 2025 and early into 2026 to hopefully get some of the usable data that we can then be developing. Because I'm also keeping in mind that we're also going to be building our next biennial budget at the same time. So there's a lot of timing that we're trying to coincide with that.
A couple comments too.
Honorable Mayor, I just want
Director
to
Wade.
add something to the conversation. You know, we're a long way out from having the 6th cent planned for, and we all know that the county has big plans for that too. A project, a revenue-generating project with a good business plan is a place where we can strategically issue revenue bonds as a funding source, which we don't often do. But as long as if we have a good business plan and there actually is a need for a facility, that could be a funding source for this project, which is a little unusual for us. But I want to go ahead and put that on the table because it's something we've been talking about internally, and this type of project is particularly well suited, assuming the numbers line up, which is why we have to incorporate this business plan as part of the analysis.
And if I could piggyback on that, Mayor, I'd mention, you know, you've heard tonight about 2 potential projects that could be 6 cent eligible. And I think, no offense, I'm not trying to pit the gentleman at the end of the table against one another.
He's got a gun. Come on.
But I do suspect that on a ballot, the voters would have a higher preference for public safety facilities over recreation. I may be wrong. And so that's why revenue bonds are a really important thing that we keep our eye on. I would also add that I think, was it you, Councilor Lockhart, that was talking about winter visitation in Laramie through the tourism board? So I haven't really talked to Mike about this yet, but I'll plant the seed that I think there's a potential partnership with tourism here, and I'd like to visit with them. Maybe I'll talk to you, Matt, about it, about whether maybe they'd like to participate in this study and possibly even a little bit financially, because if you all have heard of the youth sports ranch in Casper that Casper recently built, and some of you may have been there with your children, that thing, I think it costs $40 million, but it is bringing in the bucks to Casper. They have like 15 fields in there, volleyball, basketball. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So I think the potential to increase winter visitation and that return on investment through this economic analysis we might find partners in this evaluation process and then in a future construction that we don't know now.
Bork?
Okay, well, as long as we're ready to move on, I have next in the workbook, page 111, getting into the Recreation Center Fund. Unless City Manager, you wanted to go over to, back into the other funds in the back before we get to Rec Center Fund. Okay. Okay, so I want to just generally say Rec Center is doing well. The Rec Center Fund is doing well. We have higher revenues coming in than what were expected. We have been able to do some cost control measures to bring in our costs, hopefully at least within budgeted amounts, if not a little lower. We have a lot of things that are going on. As you all well know, this is a function that really we try and operate not as a business, but like a business, with that model in mind of reducing the subsidy that the general fund bears through a variety of things. And we've talked about several of those already. So I'm just going to cover some highlights. There's all kinds of pages that lead up to getting into the meat and potatoes, but some of our objectives for 2026 is, and you'll see this in the supplemental request, this is on page 112, is implementing a new recreation app to streamline. So if any, I hope all of you are members and have accounts with RecTrack. RecTrack is what we use for our memberships at the rec center, and that's how you register for programs and swim lessons and all of those. The new app would be part of RecTrack as well, but it's essentially putting RecTrack on your phone. So everything that you can do on the computer or at our front desk, you could do on your phone, including taking the place of your membership card. You would just come in with your phone and tap that right there as you enter, and it would open up the gates. But it would also allow for additional flexibility and additional expansion of what can be done. And so we're really excited about this opportunity. The app is now, I think, in a place. It's been around for a few years, but it was kind of clunky, and they've made some really great enhancements. So I'm excited to look at rolling that out. continuing some automation techniques as well, including better and easier ways to reserve facilities at the facility, create your memberships, engage with us in a more streamlined, automated way, and reducing the amount of paper-based processes. Just for instance, this past week, we have streamlined and gotten rid of a lot of the paper involved in even canceling memberships. We never want to see members go away, but it's been a very clunky paper-based process, and now that can all be almost exclusively done online without engaging in paper-based stuff. So our revenue, as I had mentioned, has rebounded significantly, and we're now back to pre-pandemic levels. And we're very excited that we are hoping to see about $1.4 million in revenue at the end of this fiscal year, which is significantly higher than what we've seen in the past. As you can see on the middle of page 113, our expected adjusted budget for general fund support transfer, which at one point in 2021 was 1.5 million, even in 2024 was budgeted at over $1 million. With the changes to the facility. So this is, again, I want to be very transparent that this is adjusted with the facilities things being taken out. No, am I saying that wrong, Director Wade?
I'll actually.
Okay, please.
I'll talk about
Yes,
that later.
thank you.
That would be more
Okay.
appropriate. Yeah.
But as you can see, the adjusted is at 645,000. So we're excited for that. We continue to expect that revenue is going to continue on the same trajectory, and keeping costs on daily operational. The big unknown on that facility, as you all well know, is what's going to break next. And it's an older facility, it's aging, and things do have a tendency to break. And we try and take all the measures we can in preventative maintenance and regular, care on the wear and tear items, but things will still break. That's the big unknown. But operationally, our programs are doing well. Our memberships are doing well. We anticipate, as I've talked about, increased programs being launched this upcoming year. Our Adventure Kids program still continues to far exceed our expectations, and we expect that to continue as well. So moving on to, let's see, I guess 114, the overall budget. City Manager, you've been covering this. Did you want to?
That's okay, I'll let you go into your supplementals on 117.
117, excellent, okay. So our supplementals, very few of them, but we think they're important. And we talked about this first chunk on the top of 117 is specifically related to that software app, the new rec app. Again, not going to just be for the rec center, although that is one of the prime beneficiaries, but it's also going to help us streamline how people reserve parks and park facilities. We anticipate, if anybody's been out to a park, you see the whiteboard that has this is reserved. What we're hoping to see as we launch is we're going to move that and shift that away. It's going to be a QR code, so you can actually scan on your phone, and it'll take you right to the reservation page on your phone, and you'll see what's available, is it reservable, and you'll be able to stand there and literally just reserve it right while you're at the facility in just hopefully a few easy clicks. It's not inexpensive, but I don't think it's super expensive. It's $11,000 initially, but as you see, there's a couple of 5,000 of that 11 is one-time cost. It's the purchase fee and the training. We estimate it's about a $6,000 ongoing licensing fee. That may be variable up or down just slightly, but that's the best number we could get from that. We also have just some additional licensing fees that have increased generally from Vermont systems. That's what's at the bottom of page 117. That's $10,300. Well, 6,000 of that is the increased licensing fee, and then investment fees of $4,300 for, I'm assuming, Director Wade, that's our endowment investment fees? Yes. So going on to, do we have any questions on that? Okay. So on page 118, I am requesting a one-time $40,000 part-time staffing increase. Because we have pulled the facility staff away from the facility, and they helped with some of the operational things like janitorial, custodial, and the facility staff actually was the group that was in charge of opening and closing the building every night. They were called our facility managers, technically. And it was our janitorial, custodial, maintenance staff that were doing that. That didn't make sense to me. That was one of the reasons we pulled back. So because of that, we have now had to reorganize how we staff our front desk and floor staff at the recreation center, create a new tier of provisional staff called a provisional lead or a customer operations lead. And they are now in charge of opening and closing the buildings in the mornings and the evenings, as well as staff has taken on a much larger environmental, custodial, janitorial role. And so you see it as a one-time, not as an ongoing, because it's going to take me a little bit of time to figure out how things are going to flesh out and kind of finalize. I hope that this does not need to be an ongoing and that we'll be able to use our staff more efficiently as we go, as we finalize and smooth out this change. You do see a $35,000 reduction, though, which is ongoing with COLA reductions, and I won't spend time on that. And then the last section there, you saw that 194,675 over in the general fund side. This is the reduction side of that that we talked about in the general fund portion. Any questions on that before I move into capital projects equipment?
Questions or comments? I see none. Continue.
Okay, I have just a couple, and one of them is actually another ACRB request that was approved and is waiting final approval, which is $23,000 for cardio equipment. We try and replace at least several pieces of cardio equipment each year. ACRB has been kind enough to be able to fund that. The only other one in equipment is a $5,000 request for an additional automated pool vacuum. And as you can see in the description on 119, we have one, but what that means is it doesn't allow us to be cleaning both pools at the same time as we would like to be able to do, and it doesn't leave us a backup. So if one goes down, we're down. So $5,000 to add an additional automated pool vacuum to our equipment inventory. Any questions on that page?
I see none.
Okay, so on page 120, this is our capital projects requests, and we have 3 requests that actually one is going to be removed. So you see there's a $10,000 request and a $40,000 request. One is for the indoor leisure pool lazy river cover, and one is for an outdoor leisure pool cover. Pool covers are amazing pieces of equipment. They're bulky, they're the bane of our lifeguard staff, but man, they do a lot for energy efficiency, keeping chemicals better balanced, but as you see, they're not inexpensive, but we have replaced all of the other pool covers in our inventory other than these 2. This would complete, and in fact, the lazy river pool cover, the only reason it wasn't included in the other replacements was because that lazy river is such a weird shape. That's why it's $10,000. But these are just thick insulated blankets if you've not seen them. We are removing the third one for the $250,000. That was for the indoor UV sanitizing system replacement. Only removing it because next Tuesday, you'll see an item coming before you as a budget amendment to actually add that UV system filter replacement onto our sand filter replacement project. So let me just give a very brief explanation. The UV system is a sanitizing system. Sand filter is a media filtration system. You run the water through a UV light and it sanitizes. There's a lot of bacteriological and biological material that doesn't get sanitized through the sand filter system that will get sanitized. In fact, if anybody's heard of cryptosporidium, it's a really nasty piece of little teeny tiny bacteriological agent. They are becoming more and more chlorine resistant. So treating our pool with chlorine doesn't necessarily kill that. It doesn't get filtered out. It has shown some efficacy putting it through UV systems. The other thing that the UV system does is it allows us to use less chemicals in the pool, which has numerous benefits. One of them financial, obviously. Using less chemicals, we're spending less money. But if you've ever walked in the pool and said, wow, it smells like chlorine and my eyes start burning, it's not chlorine, it's chloramines. It's the byproduct of chlorine after it's broken down. By using less chlorine in the water, you have less chloramines in the air, which improves the air quality in the overall pool. Those chloramines are also acidic, or they eat the paint off the walls and the metal. So they're not great to have in large quantities, and so by reducing that, our UV system, we have a system in place. We don't need them at the outdoor pool. Thankfully, the sun does all the outdoor UV sanitizing. But the indoor leisure pool, the indoor lap pool, and the whirlpool, of those three, the indoor leisure pool has the system is pretty much failed. The other two are requiring more and more maintenance. Because these systems were put into place 20 years ago when the facility was built, the equipment is obsolete. We can't even find outside replacement equipment without ordering it from, I believe, Yugoslavia or somewhere in the Czech Republic somewhere. So it's getting very expensive. And quite honestly, it's a 20-year-old system. So it made more sense, as I was talking to the sand filter replacement company that we've issued the contract for that project, as we're ripping everything out of that very tiny room that I know Councilor Lockhart got to see it most recently, walking through. By taking the sand equipment out, the UV equipment is right there also. And so it just made more sense to use the economy of lower labor costs to have that contractor replace that equipment at the same time that we're replacing the sand filter. So we did not intend, this was in here as just a separate contract that we were going to do at a later date. It just made more sense to try and fast track that and try and do it with the replacement project. So we're removing it from this, but you'll see that come before you as an amendment next week. As an amendment to the sand filter contract. So just wanted to give you a little background on why we're looking at the UV system. It is a very important element to the pool operations, both for health as well as economics. So if do you have any questions on any of those?
Questions or comments? I see none.
That is it for the Rec Center Fund.
Yeah, let's kind of wrap up the Rec Center Fund. So the recommendations for changes are pretty modest. You see they're largely in capital. In operations, it's $11,000 against a $2.34 million budget, so pretty insignificant. And then you see that large downward adjustment in the Rec Center of $189,000, and that's reflecting, I think it is page 117. Yeah. The downward adjustment of $189,675 is the offset of the increase that you saw in the general fund as we reorganize and allocate the cost for facilities management differently. With that, I wanted to let Director Wade walk you through the financial position of the fund, and then we'll be, I think, largely wrapped up.
So I just want to give you a couple of points of perspective for this fund. I do believe that in 2025, we see this fund, what I'll call just turning the corner back to what I consider to be normal for the fund based on its revenue performance and its cost recovery. So I want to just remind council that you can see the history of the cost recovery on page 113. Certainly, we did talk a lot about this during the pandemic because we were using a lot of the grant funds that we got during that time to support really the dominant operation that suffered economically during that pandemic for really good reasons, right? People were not going to rec centers, but we still needed to operate our community recreation center. And so there's a couple of things that I see looking into 2026 that I want to give you perspective on. So that cost recovery, I did not go back and restate it for prior years because of the facilities management move. I may do that for next year, but candidly, that's going to take me 4 to 6 hours by the time we reconstruct the payroll distribution for 6 employees who are distributed between multiple divisions. And those numbers need to be correct. They need to be perfect if they're in our budget publication. So I just couldn't find that time this year to do that. So the cost recovery is actually still right around $800,000 if you want to compare it to previous years. And I think it's important I put that on the record. However, when I look at revenue, I do consider it to be at least $70,000 under forecasted based on my concurrence with Director Bork that we are going to end the year at 1.4 million. And so we're a little under forecasted in revenue, which is going to take that cost recovery down into the low 700s. The other thing that I am intentionally choosing to do next year with the operating transfer that we have not done in years is build fund balance for future capital in the Recreation Center Fund. That is coming out of the operating transfer to the tune of $100,000. And so if you take $100,000 off of that 730 I just said, we're in the low 600s for the operating transfer. That is not adjusted, and so that to me is that return to normal that we've really been looking for. The other thing that I really agree with that Director Bork is doing is taking facilities out of this operation. You know, historically, it had relied on those facilities position. It had not been working for a long time. And I think that's some of the reasons we were seeing some of the cost increases in the facility. And I do think Director Bork is doing a lot of work, not only now, but in the future, to kind of, let's say, just make sure that money is used as efficiently as possible. And that's one of the benefits you get from having a director again in that area. And so if you look at the history and you say, well, our operating transfer used to be somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 pre-pandemic, you inflate that by 25% because that is the real inflation we've experienced since 2020. I just checked that to make sure I was right. That means our new normal, the amount, and what I mean by normal is the amount the general fund is built to fund for the normal operations of the rec center is somewhere between $375 and $625 a year. And so we're getting very close with what has already been done. And I do have confidence that with what we'll continue to see, because we do have a lot of one-time authorizations in this fund right now that were kind of stopgap measures that related to lots of things, certainly not poor management. We had some very different employment conditions. I'm sure you guys remember the lifeguard crisis of 2023, and we'll just call it that. And so I think I do, in my opinion, think this fund has turned the corner, and that does make me really happy personally, because it was something we were like, how long is this going to last? And so enter 2026 and what I think is going to be a really good year. And the rec center will also end 2025 strongly and accumulating fund balance. And that's really important because there's been a lot of deferred maintenance at the facility. The general fund has been funding that, but it would be nice if the fund could also generate enough reserve to pay for maybe $50,000 of that maintenance a year.
Thanks, Jen. Lastly, one of the things the director will be working on to dovetail off what Jen said is really identifying the condition of the mechanical systems, the building envelope, everything in that building, and putting that into a capital plan so that we have, now that our building is aged and we have a higher need for maintenance and capital reinvestment, that we have a strategic plan for that in place as we go into the next biennium. So that's work that'll be done this year and we'll talk about during budget next year. And hopefully parsing out those expenses in a more even way across fiscal years by having good planning. With that closes out the Recreation Center Fund. Mayor, I will tell you there are two other funds associated with Parks and Recreation. One is in your other funds section of the book on page 276. It's the Parks and Rec Development Fund. I do not intend to cover that fund tonight. Really, all that is there is the projects that were approved by the rec mill are now reflected in that budget, so you can peruse that on your own. And if you have questions, we're happy to answer them. The other associated fund is the Cemetery Perpetual Trust Fund on page 276. Also, no change there. Feel free to peruse that. And if you have questions about that fund and the uses, feel free to reach out to probably Director Wade, because it is a perpetual trust and there are no recommended changes in that fund either. So it's really almost an accounting matter, more than a budgetary matter. Yep. I think that's everything, unless, Mike, you had anything you wanted to close out with.
The only other fund that we had not talked about is I do have $140,000 in the, I'm trying to remember.
SPT?
No, the Capital Construction Fund.
Oh, yes.
So page 127.
Thank you.
And this is a very simple, easy, we're requesting $140,000 for parking lot crack seal and repairs. Just something that's needed. It's one of those, we spend $140,000 now, or we spend $500,000 a couple of years from now. And this is really mainly to focus on the rec center parking lot, the ice and event center parking lot, as well as some of the municipal lots, like the municipal staff parking lot here, and what's the one that's in front of the county building, or between us and that lot?
The annex lot, yeah.
Yes. So really just taking this 140, using it as much as we can to get as many of the parking lots crack sealed and repaired throughout our system. So that was the only other one that I had on my list.
Thank you. I forgot that one. I appreciate it. All right, Mayor, it's your meeting. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments at this time? Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for city staff and all the directors for the presentations today. I know it's late, so I'll just say this. Just want to say thanks to Director Bork and appreciate his 8 months being here in the city and my 4 months of being on the Parks, Trees, and Rec Advisory Board. It's been really impressive to watch him work and work with the other staff members and really bring some innovative ideas. So I think that's reflected in a lot of these budget requests and just really, really appreciate it. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no further questions or comments, this meeting is adjourned. Oh, we've got public comment. Is there public comment? I see no public anywhere. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.